Imagine a realm far beyond the reach of ordinary eyes, a world where mighty gods dwell and the winds carry whispers of ancient power. In this realm, the skies glow with a soft, golden light, rivers shimmer like threads of silver, and mountains rise with the quiet majesty of eternity. This is Asgard, the home of the Norse gods, a place where stories are born and legends come alive, where the lives of gods unfold with both grandeur and intimacy. Among these gods stands one whose presence commands respect and whose strength is unmatched: Thor, the thunderer, the protector, the son of Odin. Thor is not just a figure of raw power, he is a guardian, a force against chaos, a symbol of courage, and a touchstone for tales that have traveled through centuries, carried in the hearts of storytellers and dreamers. Thor is most famously known for his hammer, Mjölnir, a weapon that is not merely metal but a conduit of divine might. It is said to strike with the sound of rolling thunder, to protect gods and humans alike, and to return to Thor's hand no matter the distance it travels. But the hammer is far more than an instrument of war, it is a symbol, an emblem of order amid chaos, a bridge between the mortal world and the divine. To understand Thor, one must understand Mjölnir, for the two are inseparable. The hammer is an extension of Thor's essence, a reflection of his responsibilities, and a testament to the creativity, magic, and mystery that permeates Norse mythology. As we begin this journey into the story of Thor's hammer, we do so not with haste, but with patience, allowing each detail, each whisper of legend, to unfold gently, like a quiet flame illuminating a darkened room. This is not a tale of hurried battles or frantic pursuit. Instead, it is a slow, immersive narration designed to carry you through the landscape of ancient myth, allowing the rhythms of the story to soothe and the imagery to calm the mind. As you listen, imagine the distant roll of thunder across the fjords, the scent of pine and earth, the soft rustle of leaves in a world untouched by time. In this atmosphere, the story of Thor and his hammer can take shape in your imagination, vivid and alive, yet gentle, almost like a lullaby whispered across the centuries. Long before Thor became the god known for his hammer, he was a young god, learning, growing, and testing his strength in ways both subtle and dramatic. The halls of Asgard were filled with the hum of activity, gods and goddesses moving with purpose, sages studying the runes, and warriors preparing for unseen battles. Thor, with his fiery hair and booming voice, stood out among them, a combination of warmth, courage, and unrefined force. His laughter could fill a hall with light, and his temper, though formidable, was balanced by a deep loyalty and love for those he vowed to protect. In these early days, Thor's character was forged much like his future hammer would be, under the guidance of wisdom, in the heat of challenge, and with the understanding that power is meaningful only when wielded with purpose. The hammer, Mjölnir, did not simply exist from the beginning. It had to be created, crafted, and tested. Its story is intertwined with gods and giants, with cunning and bravery, with humor and subtle lessons. Before the first spark of its creation, the realms were alive with anticipation, and the balance of power hung delicately. Giants, beings of immense strength and unpredictable nature, posed a constant threat to Asgard and to the realms of humans. The gods needed a protector, a force capable of withstanding chaos, and so the hammer's eventual birth was not merely an event but a necessity, a promise of order to counterbalance the wildness of the world. In this narrative, you will meet not only Thor but also the beings who shaped the hammer's destiny: dwarves, whose craftsmanship is unparalleled in all the 9 realms, and Loki, the trickster, whose cunning and mischief often set the stage for the most extraordinary tales. Each character brings depth, contrast, and nuance to the story. They remind us that even in a world of gods, the interplay of wit, skill, and courage creates the most enduring legends. As we journey through the story of Mjölnir, imagine the gentle crackle of the forge, the rhythmic hammering of dwarven hands shaping something extraordinary. Hear the distant echo of Thor's steps as he moves through Asgard, preparing for challenges yet unseen. Sense the subtle tension in the air, the delicate balance between order and chaos, strength and responsibility. And as these images take root in your mind, allow the story to flow over you like a soft current, guiding you deeper into the world of Norse mythology, where each word is a brushstroke, painting the grandeur of a universe both fearsome and beautiful. By the end of this journey, you will not only know the tale of Thor's hammer but also feel its weight, its significance, and its enduring power. You will sense the care, magic, and creativity that birthed it, and you will understand why, for countless generations, the story of Mjölnir has been whispered, recounted, and revered. Tonight, let the story of Thor and his hammer carry you into a world of calm adventure, timeless wonder, and gentle reflection. Let the hammer's tale unfold slowly, its echoes settling like soft thunder in the distance, as you prepare to drift into rest, guided by the rhythm of myth and the quiet power of one of the most iconic weapons in all of legend.
Beyond Thor himself lies the realm he calls home, a world both magnificent and serene, yet filled with subtle tension, a realm known as Asgard. But Asgard is only one part of a much larger, interconnected tapestry, a cosmic design that stretches across 9 realms, each with its own beauty, danger, and magic. To truly understand the story of Thor's hammer, it helps to drift gently through these realms, feeling the quiet rhythm of their existence, imagining the sights, sounds, and even the almost tangible energy that flows between them. At the very heart of this cosmic web stands Yggdrasil, the great world tree. Its branches reach into the heavens, its roots sink into the depths of the underworld, and its trunk forms the spine of the universe. Around Yggdrasil, the realms spiral, connected yet distinct. There is Midgard, the world of humans, familiar yet fragile, where mortal lives are brief but meaningful. There is Jotunheim, the land of giants, wild and untamed, where mountains rise like jagged teeth and storms sweep through valleys without warning. There is Alfheim, realm of the light elves, whose delicate beauty brings a quiet, luminous calm to the cosmos. And then, of course, there is Asgard, a place of golden halls, gleaming spires, and a sense of timeless order that stands in gentle contrast to the chaos of the giants. Walking through Asgard in the mind's eye is like stepping into a world suspended in soft light. Its streets are not crowded or noisy, but alive with gentle motion, gods and goddesses moving with purpose, sages murmuring the meanings of runes, and warriors practicing with silent concentration. The halls shimmer as though the walls themselves contain a quiet energy, and the air carries the faint scent of pine, incense, and something almost electric, a whisper of the magical essence that permeates every corner of the realm. Each hall tells its own story, not through carved inscriptions alone, but through the way sunlight or starlight touches the gilded floors, the way the wind hums against tall windows, and the way the smallest leaf on a tree in the courtyard seems to vibrate with the same rhythm as the heartbeat of the cosmos. Asgard is a place of contrasts, calm yet alert, beautiful yet formidable. It is in this space that Thor lives, where the responsibilities of a god weigh lightly but persistently, and where the presence of giants beyond the borders of the realm creates a tension that is never fully absent. This contrast, between peace and potential danger, mirrors the essence of Thor's hammer itself, a tool of protection born out of necessity, forged to maintain order in a universe where chaos constantly threatens to seep in. And yet, within the calm of Asgard, there is also room for laughter, for companionship, for the quiet moments that reveal the humanity of gods. Traveling in thought beyond Asgard, one can imagine the vast, rugged lands of Jotunheim. Here, the giants roam freely, towering and formidable, their presence both awe-inspiring and slightly unsettling. Storm clouds gather over jagged peaks, lightning dances silently in the distance, and the wind carries a weight that seems almost physical. Jotunheim is the natural foil to Asgard's structured beauty, a place where unpredictability rules, and where strength, cunning, and perseverance are tested at every turn. The contrast between the safety of Asgard and the wildness of Jotunheim deepens the significance of Thor's role. He is not only a god of storms but also a bridge between these realms, a protector who carries the calm of his home into the turbulence beyond. Midgard, the realm of humans, lies somewhere in between, suspended below Yggdrasil's boughs. From Asgard, it appears almost delicate, fragile in comparison to the realms of gods and giants. Yet it is vital, vibrant with life, and full of the quiet struggles and triumphs that give meaning to mortal existence. Thor's relationship with Midgard is one of guardianship, an invisible thread linking the strength of a god to the fragility and resilience of humanity. In the whisper of the wind through a human village, in the soft flicker of candlelight in a wooden hall, one can sense Thor's influence, a silent promise that protection is near, even when unseen. As the mind drifts through these realms, it is easy to feel the rhythm of the Norse cosmos, the interplay of light and shadow, of calm and tension, of order and chaos. Each realm has its own personality, its own energy, yet all are connected through Yggdrasil, through the delicate balance maintained by the gods, and through the actions of beings like Thor, whose hammer serves as both shield and symbol. The story of Mjölnir is inseparable from the story of these realms, because without the giants of Jotunheim, the fragile beauty of Midgard, or the serene majesty of Asgard itself, the hammer would have no purpose, no context, no weight beyond its physical form. In this quiet exploration, there is no rush, no need to hurry from one realm to the next. Each step, each image, each sound can be savored, allowing the listener to become fully immersed in the world of the gods. It is a slow, meditative journey, designed not only to inform but also to soothe, to relax the mind, and to create a sense of being cradled within the myth itself. By understanding the realms in which Thor moves, we can appreciate the hammer not merely as a weapon, but as a vital part of a delicate cosmic balance, a tool that carries with it the weight of responsibility, protection, and enduring legend. As the story continues, the listener carries with them the calm majesty of Asgard, the rugged unpredictability of Jotunheim, and the delicate vibrancy of Midgard. These realms, alive in the imagination, form the stage upon which Thor's hammer will be created, tested, and wielded. In this space, the story can unfold slowly, like the gentle rising of dawn, each moment a quiet step deeper into the world of Norse myth, preparing the mind to wander peacefully, guided by the rhythm of legend and the soft power of Thor's hammer.
Long before Thor became the god of thunder, before Mjölnir thundered through the skies and his name inspired both awe and comfort, there was a young god learning to walk in the halls of Asgard, discovering the breadth of his strength and the depth of his responsibility. Born as the son of Odin, the All-Father, and Jord, the personification of the earth, Thor was a child of contrasts, divine yet deeply connected to the natural world, fierce yet capable of warmth and tenderness. His birth itself was seen as a promise, a symbol that the realms would always have a protector, one who could wield great power with purpose and care. From his earliest days, Thor displayed a vitality that could not be contained. His laughter echoed through the golden halls, a booming sound that carried both joy and authority. But alongside this energy lay a sense of restlessness. Even among gods, he felt the pull of curiosity, the need to explore the limits of his own abilities, and the desire to understand his place within the cosmic order. Each day in Asgard was a lesson, not just in skill or strength, but in patience, judgment, and the careful balance of power and responsibility. The young god's childhood was marked by small adventures that hinted at the grand exploits yet to come. He would wrestle with friends in the courtyards, not merely for sport, but as a way to learn about endurance and resilience. He would explore the winding corridors of Asgard's halls, observing the runes inscribed upon walls by the sages, listening to the quiet hum of magic that seemed to linger in every corner. And often, he would look beyond Asgard's boundaries toward the distant lands of giants, imagining the challenges that lay there, sensing the tension between order and chaos, light and shadow, calm and storm. Thor's father, Odin, was a guide and a teacher, but not in the strict, commanding way one might imagine. Instead, Odin allowed Thor to grow through experience, to learn through both triumph and error. He would offer riddles and subtle advice, guiding the young god to consider not just the strength of his arm, but the wisdom of his choices. Power alone is not enough, Odin would say in a voice that seemed to echo through time itself. It must be guided by understanding, by loyalty, by the willingness to act not for oneself, but for the good of many. These early lessons, absorbed quietly and often unconsciously, would shape Thor's character in ways far deeper than any physical training could. As Thor grew, so too did his sense of duty. The giants of Jotunheim, fierce and unpredictable, were a constant reminder that the peace of Asgard was fragile. Though still young, Thor felt the stirrings of protectiveness, the instinct to defend, to stand as a bulwark against chaos. In his dreams, he imagined the hammer he would one day wield, though it did not yet exist. He imagined its weight in his hand, the way it would return to him with unerring precision, and the sense of authority it would lend to his every action. Even at this early stage, the idea of responsibility was intertwined with his identity, a quiet pulse beneath the surface of his youthful energy. Yet Thor's early life was not all seriousness. There was humor, mischief, and moments of quiet reflection. He learned the value of friendship, of laughter shared in golden halls or beneath the shade of Asgardian trees. He experienced the subtle beauty of his surroundings, the shimmer of sunlight on polished floors, the gentle sway of branches in Asgardian gardens, the distant murmur of rivers winding through the golden city. These sensory moments, soft and persistent, were as important as any test of strength, for they taught Thor that the world he was to protect was filled with wonder worth defending. Even in his youth, Thor's interactions with other gods revealed his character. With his mother, Jord, he shared a grounded connection, an understanding of the natural world and its rhythms. With Odin, he learned to balance curiosity with wisdom. With the other gods, he learned camaraderie, the dynamics of loyalty, and the subtle challenges of leadership. Each interaction added a layer to his growing persona, preparing him for the responsibilities that would come with wielding a weapon as powerful as Mjölnir. The young god's training was both physical and spiritual. He practiced wielding clubs and hammers of lesser power, honing his strength, his aim, and his reflexes. He learned the movements of storms, sensing how thunder rolled and lightning arced across the sky. He observed the behavior of animals, the flow of rivers, and the patterns of the wind, internalizing lessons of rhythm, balance, and timing. These early experiences, seemingly simple, were in fact laying the groundwork for the god he would become, not merely a figure of raw strength, but a protector who understood the subtleties of both combat and cosmic harmony. By the time Thor reached the threshold of adulthood, he was already a figure of quiet awe. His presence carried both reassurance and authority. Those around him sensed that he was destined for great deeds. Yet Thor himself remained humble, guided by a blend of innate courage and the lessons of his youth. The stories of his early adventures, though small in scale compared to later feats, were already whispered among the gods, a reminder that greatness is born from patience, learning, and the careful cultivation of both strength and heart. And so, as the golden halls of Asgard shimmered with the soft light of day, Thor's story was beginning, poised to grow in ways that would shape not only the fate of gods but the very balance of the realms themselves. The hammer he would one day wield was not yet in his grasp, but the spirit that would command it was already forming, resilient, courageous, and deeply connected to both the beauty and the fragility of the world around him. In this quiet, unfolding moment, we glimpse the young god whose laughter, curiosity, and quiet wisdom would carry him through the challenges to come, and whose journey with Mjölnir would become one of the most enduring and comforting tales in all of Norse mythology. Even the strongest god must face moments when power alone cannot protect all that is cherished. For Thor, that moment came with the growing threat of the giants, beings of immense strength who lingered at the edges of Asgard, watching, waiting, and plotting. Though young Thor had already proven himself in small skirmishes and adventures, he began to understand that raw strength was not enough to maintain the safety of the realms. He would need something greater, a tool that could harness his power, focus it, and ensure that the delicate balance between order and chaos would be preserved. This need, this awareness, planted the seed for the creation of what would become the most famous weapon in all of Norse mythology, Mjölnir, Thor's hammer. The giants, or Jotunheim, were not mindless creatures. They were cunning, resourceful, and persistent. Their immense size and raw power made them formidable opponents, but it was their unpredictability, their willingness to challenge the gods in clever ways, that made them truly dangerous. Thor could sense their presence in the shifting clouds over distant mountains, in the way the wind would suddenly howl through Asgard's golden spires, carrying a warning in its subtle rhythm. The peace of Asgard, though beautiful and calming, was fragile, and Thor knew that without a weapon forged specifically for him, the realm could not withstand a concerted assault. This realization was not born of fear but of responsibility. Thor understood that a protector is not merely someone who reacts to threats but someone who prepares for them in advance, someone who ensures that the tools and skills necessary for defense are in place long before the danger arrives. In quiet moments, he would walk through the halls of Asgard, observing the weapons of past heroes, examining their craftsmanship, and imagining how a new weapon, imbued with both power and magic, could surpass them all. He envisioned a hammer that could strike with the force of a storm, that could return to his hand no matter how far it flew, and that would symbolize the order he sought to maintain in a universe teetering between chaos and harmony. It was not only the giants that necessitated this hammer. Thor also felt the weight of his role among the gods. As a son of Odin, he was expected not merely to defend Asgard but to uphold the dignity and stability of all the realms. His actions would set an example, showing that strength must be tempered with wisdom, that courage is most meaningful when wielded in service to others, and that even a god must plan and prepare for challenges beyond immediate control. Mjölnir would not be merely a weapon of war, it would be an extension of Thor's very essence, a tool that embodied his courage, responsibility, and devotion to the balance of the cosmos. The idea of a hammer also carried symbolic weight. In Norse culture, a hammer is not only a tool but a sign of protection, of blessing, and of authority. It could consecrate homes, sanctify marriages, and bless newborn children, linking the divine to the everyday lives of mortals. Thor's hammer, therefore, would serve many purposes beyond battle. It would be a reminder of order, a beacon of stability, and a comforting presence for those who looked to the gods for guidance. Thor envisioned Mjölnir not as an instrument of violence but as a guardian of peace, a force that maintained the delicate equilibrium between realms. Thor's need for such a weapon led him to seek the finest craftsmen in all the realms, the dwarves, beings renowned for their skill in shaping magic and matter. These dwarfs, masters of the forge and the hidden arts, could transform raw materials into objects of unimaginable power. Yet even the greatest of their creations required a spark, a vision, and a purpose. Thor brought to them not only a request but also the weight of necessity, the urgency of a looming threat, and the clarity of a god who understood what was at stake. The dwarfs listened carefully, sensing that this task was unlike any other, that the hammer they were about to create would become a symbol remembered for all time. In contemplating the need for the hammer, Thor also reflected on his own limitations. Even gods are bound by circumstance, and even mighty strength cannot always counter cunning or unforeseen danger. The hammer would serve as a bridge between his human-like vulnerabilities and his divine power, amplifying his abilities while reminding him that preparation and foresight are as crucial as courage. This recognition of limits, far from diminishing him, made Thor wiser, more measured, and ultimately more ready to assume the mantle of protector in a universe filled with uncertainty. In quiet hours, as the sun set over the golden spires of Asgard and the first stars glimmered above, Thor would imagine the hammer taking shape, see its gleaming head forged in fire, feel its weight settling comfortably in his hand. He would visualize its power returning with perfect precision, its magic flowing seamlessly from his will to the world around him. In these moments of reflection, the story of Mjölnir began, not as a tale of conflict but as a meditation on responsibility, strength, and the foresight required to protect all that one holds dear. Thus, the need for the hammer was not born from fear nor from vanity, but from a profound understanding of what it meant to be a god, a guardian, and a force of stability in a world where chaos always lurks at the edges. The hammer was both a solution and a promise, a solution to the immediate threats of giants, and a promise to the realms that order, courage, and protection would always endure. As Thor's mind settled on this vision, the foundation of one of the most enduring legends in Norse mythology was quietly laid, a story that would travel through centuries, whispered in tales of bravery, magic, and divine craftsmanship. And so, in the stillness of Asgard, under the soft glow of twilight and the faint hum of magic in the air, Thor's resolve grew. The hammer would be created. The realms would be defended. And the story of Mjölnir would begin, not as a tale of war alone, but as a testament to foresight, responsibility, and the gentle strength that underlies even the mightiest of gods. To create a hammer as powerful and extraordinary as Mjölnir, Thor needed the finest craftsmen in all the realms, beings whose skill was unmatched, whose hands could shape metal as if it were water, and whose imaginations could breathe life into magic itself. These were the dwarfs, Brokkr and Sindri, masters of the forge and keepers of secrets that few others could comprehend. Their workshops lay deep within the mountains of Svartalfheim, hidden in caverns that glowed with molten light, where the air shimmered with heat and possibility, and the faint echo of hammer strikes resonated like the heartbeat of the earth. It was here, in the quiet of these enchanted forges, that the story of Mjölnir would truly begin. Thor approached the dwarfs not as a mere visitor, but with the authority of a god and the purpose of a protector. The giants threatened not only Asgard but the delicate balance of all the realms, and Thor knew that only a weapon born of unparalleled craftsmanship could meet this challenge. Brokkr and Sindri listened carefully, their eyes reflecting the flickering glow of molten metal, understanding immediately the weight of the task before them. They recognized that this was not merely a commission, it was a chance to create something that would endure through all time, a piece of divine history forged by their own hands. In their workshop, the air was alive with magic. Sparks leapt from anvils with every strike, swirling in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, dancing as though they had a life of their own. The walls of the cavern were lined with shelves holding materials of unimaginable rarity, metals that shimmered like liquid sunlight, stones imbued with elemental power, and threads of gold that pulsed with energy. Each object whispered its potential, its destiny, waiting for the skill of the dwarfs to transform it into something extraordinary. Thor could feel the significance of this place, the quiet reverence with which every strike, every shape, and every spark was treated. It was a place where time slowed, where creation demanded patience, precision, and respect for the forces at play. Brokkr and Sindri worked with a rhythm that was both deliberate and fluid. The hammer would not be merely strong, it would be magical, imbued with properties that reflected Thor's own essence. As they shaped the metal, it became more than a weapon, it became a symbol of protection, courage, and divine authority. Every strike was precise, every fold and contour intentional, as though the hammer itself were guiding their hands. Even the air seemed to hum in anticipation, carrying the energy of the cosmos into the forge. Thor observed quietly, imagining the moment when Mjölnir would rest in his hand, feeling the balance, the weight, and the perfection of its design. The dwarf's work was not simple, and it required more than mere skill. It required creativity, cunning, and subtle magic that only beings of their caliber could summon. They shaped the head of the hammer from rare metals that glimmered like storm clouds, embedding runes of power into its surface. Each rune was carefully chosen to enhance strength, to ensure that the hammer would never fail in the hands of its master, and to allow it to return to Thor no matter how far it might fly. Sindri worked the handle from the finest ash wood, strong yet supple, polished to perfection and enchanted so that it would withstand the mightiest blows without faltering. Every element of Mjölnir, from the head to the handle, reflected a harmony of craftsmanship and magic, a combination that would make it the most iconic weapon in all of the realms. But creation, even in such skilled hands, was not without its challenges. The dwarfs labored for days and nights, carefully adjusting, testing, and refining each element of the hammer. Sparks flew, molten metal hissed, and the quiet rhythm of hammering echoed throughout the cavern. Thor watched, understanding that even for a god, some things required patience and trust in the skill of others. The process was as much a test of perseverance and dedication as it was of talent. Each hammer strike carried intention, each turn of the metal a reflection of thought, care, and devotion. Slowly, deliberately, Mjölnir took shape, not only as a weapon but as a work of art, a creation infused with purpose, magic, and meaning. Loki, ever curious and mischievous, watched from the shadows, adding a note of unpredictability to the calm rhythm of creation. His presence introduced subtle tension, reminding Thor and the dwarfs that even in moments of careful work, mischief could alter the course of events. Yet the dwarfs remained focused, their hands steady, their minds attuned to the rhythm of the forge, their hearts committed to bringing this extraordinary weapon into existence. Every element, every spark, every motion contributed to the final perfection of Mjölnir, and soon, it would be ready to take its place in legend. Thor, standing amidst the glowing forge, felt a sense of anticipation unlike any he had experienced before. The hammer, born of skill, magic, and purpose, was nearly complete. He could sense the power within it, the potential to protect the realms, to maintain order, and to symbolize the balance he sought to preserve. The forging of Mjölnir was not just the creation of a weapon, it was a quiet, deliberate act of preparation, foresight, and responsibility. It reflected the wisdom that Thor had been cultivating since his youth, the understanding that true strength comes not only from might but also from careful planning, trust in others, and the ability to envision a future where courage and protection are needed most. As the final sparks settled and the last runes were inscribed, Mjölnir emerged fully formed, gleaming with quiet power, humming with magic, and perfectly balanced in every detail. Thor reached for it, feeling the weight settle naturally in his hand, as if the hammer had always belonged there. In that moment, the story of Mjölnir truly began, a tale of craftsmanship, foresight, and divine purpose that would echo through generations. And as the forge's light faded into a gentle glow, the realms seemed to pause, holding their breath for the adventures, trials, and protections that this extraordinary hammer would soon bring to life.
At last, the moment arrived when Mjölnir, Thor's mighty hammer, would be forged. The air in the dwarf's workshop pulsed with quiet anticipation, thick with the mingling sense of molten metal and enchanted flames. Brokkr and Sindri, the master craftsmen, moved with precise intent, their hammers rising and falling in a steady rhythm that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the universe itself. Each strike on the glowing metal sent sparks dancing like tiny stars across the cavern, casting flickering shadows on the walls, creating a scene of gentle chaos in the otherwise disciplined environment of the forge. Thor watched, feeling the rising energy in the air, sensing that this hammer was not just a weapon, but a living piece of legend being born before his very eyes. The creation of Mjölnir was no simple task. Its strength had to surpass that of any mortal or giant, yet its balance had to be perfect, so that it could fly with unerring precision and return to Thor's hand effortlessly. Sindri carefully shaped the head of the hammer from a rare, almost celestial metal, one that seemed to hum with latent power even before the first strike of the dwarf's hammers. Brokkr added the runes, each etched with deliberate intention, protection, strength, courage, and the magical ability to ensure the hammer's loyalty to its master. Every line, every symbol, carried both subtle power and profound meaning, reflecting not only the practical use of the hammer but its significance as a symbol of cosmic balance. As the hammer took shape, Thor could sense its potential energy radiating outward. The hammer's weight in his hand, even in imagination, felt perfectly matched to his strength, a tool created to be an extension of his very being. It was a weapon that demanded responsibility, one that would shape his actions, define his role as protector, and symbolize the bridge between order and chaos. The forge's heat, the rhythm of hammering, and the careful chanting of the dwarfs combined into a quiet symphony of creation, a meditative process that required patience, focus, and a deep understanding of both magic and material. Loki, ever mischievous, lingered in the shadows, curious and calculating. Though he played no direct role in the forging, his presence added a subtle tension to the calm of the forge. He watched the sparks fly, imagining the potential consequences if even a single element of the hammer were altered. Yet the dwarfs, attuned to both magic and craft, worked undisturbed, as though aware of his gaze but unshaken by it. They understood that creation on this scale requires focus, and that a tool of divine power could not be hurried or tampered with. As Brokkr and Sindri continued, the hammer's characteristics began to emerge with clarity. Its head, perfectly symmetrical and imbued with magical resilience, would never shatter, no matter the force it struck against. Its handle, forged from the finest ash wood and enchanted with subtle runes, offered perfect balance, allowing Thor to wield it with speed, accuracy, and strength beyond measure. Yet the most remarkable feature of Mjölnir was its loyalty. When thrown, it would always return to Thor's hand, as if guided by his very will. This property, subtle yet vital, distinguished the hammer from any ordinary weapon, making it both an instrument of war and a symbol of assurance and protection. The process of forging was not without ritual. The dwarfs murmured ancient incantations under their breath, weaving the hammer's destiny into the metal, infusing it with qualities beyond mere physical strength. They invoked the elements, fire, air, earth, and water, binding them into the weapon's essence, so that Mjölnir would carry the natural power of the realms alongside the godly strength it was designed to channel. The soft hum of these chants, combined with the rhythmic hammering, created a trance-like environment. Even Thor, standing at the edge of the forge, could feel the slow, deliberate energy coalescing into something extraordinary. As the hammer neared completion, the dwarfs tested it carefully. Sparks danced as it struck the anvil, the sound resonating like distant thunder, echoing gently through the cavern. They checked its balance, its responsiveness, and the integrity of every rune and enchantment. With each test, the hammer revealed its perfection, strength that could withstand any blow, a weight that felt natural in Thor's hand, and a magic that ensured it would never betray its master. Even in these quiet moments, the hammer seemed alive, humming with potential and power, a tangible symbol of what careful craftsmanship, magic, and purpose could achieve. Finally, Brokkr and Sindri stepped back, their hands worn and blackened from the forge, their faces reflecting quiet pride and satisfaction. Mjölnir rested before Thor, gleaming with an inner light, humming softly as if aware of the destiny awaiting it. Thor lifted the hammer, feeling the familiar balance, the latent energy, and the reassuring weight that spoke of protection, courage, and responsibility. He could sense that this was more than a weapon, it was a companion, a partner in his duty as guardian of Asgard, a tool that would define his role in the stories yet to be told. In the stillness that followed, the forge seemed to exhale, as if acknowledging the completion of a task both practical and sacred. Mjölnir, born of fire, magic, and extraordinary skill, was ready to step into legend. It was a weapon that could strike with the force of storms, yet return with gentle precision, that could embody both the fury of battle and the calm assurance of protection. In its creation, the realms themselves seemed to pause, recognizing that balance had been reinforced, that chaos could be held at bay, and that a new chapter in the story of the gods was about to unfold. And so, in the quiet glow of Svartalfheim's forge, with sparks still hovering like tiny stars and the dwarfs' chants fading into the echoes of stone, Mjölnir was complete. Thor held it in his hands, feeling the perfect harmony of strength, magic, and purpose, knowing that it would accompany him through countless adventures, battles, and challenges, standing as a testament to skill, foresight, and the quiet power of creation.
Even as Mjölnir lay complete in Thor's hand, a sense of quiet triumph settled over the forge. There was one whose presence could not be ignored: Loki, the ever-curious, ever-mischievous trickster. Loki was unlike any other god. He was clever and unpredictable, quick-witted and sly, and his mind was constantly weaving schemes that could shift the balance of the realms. Though his mischief was often frustrating to the gods, it was never entirely malicious, for Loki had a unique way of testing both their cleverness and resilience. And now, with Thor in possession of Mjölnir, the trickster sensed an opportunity to stir events in ways that only he could imagine, a quiet tension beneath the calm surface of the newly forged hammer. Loki approached Thor with a smile that suggested amusement and hidden intent. "A fine weapon, Thor," he said, his voice smooth like the flowing waters of a gentle river, yet carrying an undertone that hinted at disruption. "Powerful, yes, but will it withstand all challenges? Will it ever be tested in ways you cannot anticipate?" Thor, strong and steady, felt no anger, only the familiar awareness that Loki's presence often signaled a story in motion, a twist in the unfolding of events. He knew that even the most meticulously forged hammer would meet its true purpose only through trials, and that Loki's cleverness was often the catalyst that brought those trials to life. It was not long before Loki's trickery began to take shape. In the quiet of Asgard, the trickster whispered to the giants, planting subtle ideas, nudging them towards schemes they might not have conceived on their own. He reveled in the small disturbances that could ripple outward, creating tension without the need for violence. Yet, even in mischief, Loki's actions were never entirely unkind. He seemed to understand, in his own enigmatic way, that challenges reveal character, that the strength of both gods and mortals is measured not only by power but by courage, wit, and perseverance. The story of Mjölnir, then, was shaped as much by Loki's subtle interference as by the hammer's creation. When the giant Thor devised a plan to steal the hammer, it was Loki's influence that set the stage. Him, unaware of the cunning at work behind the scenes, seized the opportunity presented by the trickster, believing it to be his own clever idea. In this quiet orchestration, Loki demonstrated a different kind of power, the power of observation, influence, and gentle manipulation. He showed that even the most formidable weapon is most meaningful when its wielder must respond to cunning and unexpected events, when bravery is measured not solely by strength but by strategy and composure. Thor, though strong and confident, understood that Mjölnir would not always make the challenges easy. Even the hammer, perfect in every aspect, required thought, patience, and sometimes humor to navigate the situations it would encounter. When Loki revealed the hammer had been taken by Thor, the situation could have felt chaotic or frightening. Instead, Thor approached it with measured determination, a calm awareness that every challenge was part of the journey, a lesson not only in combat but in patience, courage, and resourcefulness. The theft of Mjölnir became a tale of tension interwoven with cleverness. Loki suggested strategies that Thor might not have conceived on his own, guiding him toward solutions that required more than brute force. Thor, in turn, relied on his experience, his physical strength, and his growing wisdom, blending power with intellect to respond to the challenge. In these moments, the hammer's significance expanded beyond its role as a weapon. It became a symbol of partnership between creation and challenge, strength and cunning, divine craftsmanship and the unpredictable threads of fate. Even as Thor prepared to retrieve the hammer, the story maintained a calm, reflective rhythm, emphasizing subtle tension rather than frantic conflict. The interplay between Loki's trickery and Thor's response created a dynamic that was both engaging and soothing, a narrative rhythm that allowed listeners to remain immersed without feeling rushed. Each movement, each decision, was a measured step, a gentle unfolding of events that highlighted the importance of strategy, foresight, and adaptability in the face of challenges. In this way, Loki's trickery was more than mischief, it was a catalyst for growth, a gentle reminder that even gods must navigate uncertainty, rely on allies, and confront obstacles with both patience and courage. The story of Mjölnir was not solely about physical power, it was about the ways in which cleverness, foresight, and determination combined to meet the unpredictable challenges of life, even in a world of gods. As the tale unfolds, the quiet presence of Loki adds layers of richness and contrast. His mischief is never overwhelming, it is a gentle undercurrent that heightens the significance of Thor's actions, allowing the listener to appreciate the depth of the story while remaining immersed in the calm, immersive rhythm of narration. Through this interplay, the hammer's legend grows, not only as a tool of protection but as an object that connects courage, wit, and the careful balance of forces both seen and unseen. Thus, the trickster's influence, subtle yet profound, becomes an essential part of Mjolnir's journey. The hammer, forged in fire and magic, now faces the first true test, not by striking giants or smashing walls, but by existing in a world where cunning and challenge are as significant as strength. Thor's path forward, guided by both his own bravery and Loki's enigmatic guidance, ensures that the story of Mjölnir will unfold in a way that is both engaging and soothing, a narrative of adventure wrapped in a gentle, immersive rhythm, perfect for the listener's imagination to drift within. With Mjölnir finally in his hands, Thor felt a profound sense of connection, as though the hammer had been waiting for him as much as he had been waiting for it. Its weight was reassuring, perfectly balanced, neither heavy nor light, and it hummed softly with the latent energy of the realms. In the quiet moments following its creation, Thor began to explore the hammer's capabilities, testing it in ways both deliberate and instinctive. Each movement, each swing, revealed something new, not merely about the weapon, but about the deeper harmony between its power and his own strength. Thor began with simple trials, feeling the hammer's responsiveness to his command. When he raised it high, it seemed to anticipate the trajectory, following his intention as naturally as his own arm. When he let it fall, it struck the ground with a resonance that echoed through Asgard's golden halls like distant thunder. The sound was neither harsh nor frightening, but deep and calming, as if the hammer carried the pulse of the universe itself. Thor could sense that Mjölnir was alive in its own way, attuned not only to his physical movements but to his purpose, his intent, and his will. He experimented with throwing the hammer, sending it arcing through the air, only to watch it return with perfect precision to his hand. The motion was effortless, yet awe-inspiring, a reminder that this was no ordinary weapon. Mjölnir could strike with the force of a storm, yet obeyed the subtleties of Thor's guidance, responding to his direction with grace and accuracy. It was in these quiet trials that Thor first understood the full potential of the hammer, not merely as a weapon of battle, but as an extension of his own character, a symbol of responsibility, protection, and cosmic balance. The hammer's magical properties became even more evident as Thor moved through Asgard, striking targets, testing the limits of its power, and sensing the energy that flowed from it. Mjölnir could summon lightning, not in chaotic bursts, but in controlled, deliberate arcs that reflected Thor's intent. Each strike was precise, each movement measured, creating a rhythm that felt almost like a form of meditation. The combination of physical strength and magical resonance revealed a new layer of Thor's own abilities, teaching him that the hammer amplified not only power, but focus, intention, and clarity of purpose. Thor also began to explore the hammer's role as a tool of protection. He imagined the scenarios in which Mjölnir would stand as a guardian, shielding Asgard and the other realms from danger. In his mind, he saw giants attempting to breach the borders of Asgard, their massive forms silhouetted against jagged mountains and dark clouds. He raised Mjölnir, feeling the energy flow through his arm and into the weapon, imagining it striking with unstoppable force, dispersing the threat without unnecessary harm. Even in these exercises of imagination, the hammer revealed its true nature, a tool not of destruction alone, but of preservation, courage, and measured response. Beyond the physical and magical trials, Thor discovered the symbolic depth of Mjölnir. The hammer represented his role as a protector, a bridge between gods and mortals, and a reminder of the delicate balance between order and chaos. In quiet moments, he would hold the hammer and reflect on the responsibilities it embodied. Each rune inscribed upon its head spoke not only of strength but of duty, wisdom, and the interconnectedness of all realms. The more Thor practiced with the hammer, the more he felt its presence as a guide, subtly teaching him about foresight, patience, and the importance of measured action. Even Loki, observing from the shadows with his characteristic curiosity, seemed to acknowledge the hammer's significance. The trickster, who often introduced mischief into otherwise calm situations, recognized that Mjölnir was more than a weapon, it was a lesson, a test, and a symbol all in one. Loki's subtle interventions, which had previously set the stage for challenges, now became opportunities for Thor to refine his mastery of the hammer. Each encounter, each imagined trial, strengthened the bond between god and weapon, ensuring that Thor's understanding of Mjölnir was both practical and profound. Thor's first adventures with the hammer were quiet, introspective, and measured. There were no frantic battles or chaotic clashes, only the slow, deliberate testing of abilities and the gentle exploration of potential. He practiced lifting enormous stones, summoning small bursts of lightning across the training grounds, and striking targets with exact precision. Each exercise reinforced the idea that true strength is not only in the power one wields, but in the wisdom to wield it correctly, the patience to learn, and the responsibility to act with intent. By the end of these trials, Thor understood that Mjölnir was more than just a forged tool of metal and magic. It was a companion, a teacher, and a symbol of his role in the cosmos. Its power was matched by its precision, its force tempered by its loyalty, and its magic guided by Thor's own purpose. In quiet reflection, he felt the weight of responsibility settle comfortably in his hand, knowing that the hammer would not only aid him in battle but would serve as a reminder of courage, foresight, and the careful balance necessary to maintain harmony across the realms. And so, with the calm majesty of Asgard around him, the distant echoes of rivers and wind, and the soft hum of magic in the air, Thor's first true mastery of Mjölnir was complete. The hammer, forged with skill, infused with magic, and tested through intention and care, had revealed its full potential. It was a weapon of power, yes, but more importantly, it was a tool of responsibility, courage, and protection. In the gentle rhythm of these first trials, the legend of Mjölnir began to take shape, a story that would echo through generations, carrying the calm assurance of strength tempered by wisdom and the quiet magic of a world alive with myth. With Mjölnir fully mastered in quiet trials, Thor felt ready to step beyond the golden halls of Asgard and face the challenges that awaited him. His first mission with the hammer was not born from recklessness or desire for glory, but from the steady awareness that the safety of the realms depended on vigilance, courage, and careful action. The giants of Jotunheim, ever watchful, were testing boundaries, and though no battle had yet begun, their presence was felt in the shifting clouds, the sudden gusts of wind, and the subtle tremors that ran through the earth. Thor knew that to wield Mjölnir effectively, he needed more than strength. He needed calm focus, clarity of intent, and the quiet understanding that every action had consequences. The journey to Jotunheim was serene in its own way, filled with observation and reflection. As Thor traversed the realms, he felt the hum of Mjölnir in his hand, a constant reminder of responsibility and power. The landscapes shifted gradually, moving from the familiar golden spires of Asgard to rugged forests, jagged hills, and mountains that loomed like silent sentinels over the valleys below. Even the wind seemed alive, whispering in patterns that carried the distant laughter of giants, their presence both awe-inspiring and slightly unsettling. Every step Thor took was measured, every thought deliberate, as he attuned himself to the rhythms of the world around him and the potential of his newly forged hammer. When Thor finally approached the borders of Jotunheim, he sensed the first test of Mjölnir's power. The giants, unaware of the hammer's capabilities, moved with deliberate caution, their massive forms blending with the craggy landscape. Yet even in the quiet observation, Thor understood that true strength was not in striking immediately but in understanding the environment, assessing the threat, and preparing to act with both precision and purpose. He raised Mjölnir gently, feeling the energy pulse through his arm, and imagined the hammer moving with the speed and accuracy that only it could possess. In these moments, Thor's connection with Mjölnir deepened, revealing a harmony between god and weapon that was almost meditative in its calm intensity. The first encounter was subtle, almost ceremonial in its unfolding. A giant, unaware of Thor's presence, moved along a mountain ridge, and the god tested the hammer by summoning a controlled bolt of lightning. It arced from Mjölnir with quiet precision, startling the giant but causing no harm beyond a warning. The hammer's power was evident, its control absolute, and Thor felt a quiet satisfaction in the demonstration. This was not a battle, it was a moment of teaching, a reminder that power is most meaningful when guided by judgment, restraint, and the intention to preserve rather than destroy. Thor's journey through Jotunheim continued with this measured rhythm. He encountered more giants, some observing him curiously, others unaware of his presence entirely. In each situation, he tested the hammer's capabilities, summoning bursts of controlled energy, striking with precision, and ensuring that Mjölnir responded perfectly to his will. The hammer's magic, forged by the skillful hands of Brokkr and Sindri, proved flawless. It returned to his hand effortlessly, its weight steady, its runes glowing faintly with quiet power. Thor marveled at the craftsmanship once more, feeling the seamless integration of skill, magic, and purpose that made Mjölnir more than a weapon. It was a partner in maintaining balance across the realms. Even Loki's influence lingered in the background, subtle yet significant. Though the trickster had played a role in orchestrating earlier events, he now observed Thor's progress with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. Loki understood that challenges, even when subtle, are necessary to reveal true skill and wisdom. Thor's calm, measured responses to the giant's movements and the environment around him demonstrated not only his mastery of Mjölnir but his growing understanding of how power should be applied, with patience, foresight, and respect for the intricate balance of the cosmos. As Thor continued, he discovered that Mjölnir was not only a tool of combat but also a symbol of reassurance. Even in the midst of potential threats, the hammer's presence brought a sense of calm certainty. Thor realized that the hammer's purpose extended beyond battle. It was a guardian of order, a reminder of responsibility, and a beacon of courage. When giants observed the hammer's controlled power, they felt respect and caution rather than fear alone. In this way, Mjölnir served as a force of diplomacy as much as defense, a subtle reinforcement of boundaries that required neither violence nor haste. Thor's first mission with Mjölnir was slow, deliberate, and reflective, yet rich with lessons. Each swing, each strike, each controlled burst of energy taught him more about the hammer's capabilities and his own role as a protector. The giants were formidable, yes, but their presence also highlighted Thor's growth, his ability to remain composed, his patience in testing the hammer's powers, and his understanding that the balance of realms depended not on reckless action but on measured, mindful use of strength. By the time Thor returned to Asgard, the sun had begun to dip behind the golden spires, casting long, soft shadows across the city. The quiet journey back offered time for reflection. Mjölnir, resting comfortably in his hand, hummed softly with residual energy, a gentle reassurance that it had met its first test and performed flawlessly. Thor understood that this was only the beginning, that countless challenges lay ahead, yet he felt a calm certainty in the knowledge that he and Mjölnir were prepared to meet them. The hammer was no longer merely a forged object. It had become a symbol, a guide, and a source of quiet strength that would accompany him through all the adventures, trials, and responsibilities yet to come. And so, in the soft light of evening, with the gentle sounds of Asgard surrounding him, Thor's first mission with Mjölnir came to a peaceful close. The hammer had proven its power, precision, and purpose. The giants had been tested, boundaries had been reinforced, and Thor had deepened his connection with the weapon that would define so many stories in the centuries to follow. In this calm, reflective moment, the legend of Mjölnir continued to grow, a tale of courage, balance, and measured strength, unfolding gently yet profoundly, perfect for the quiet imagination of those who listen and dream. Thor's first true battle with the giants was unlike anything he had experienced during his quiet trials or measured explorations. This was no exercise in precision, no simple demonstration of Mjölnir's magic. It was a confrontation that tested his strength, wisdom, and ability to act decisively under pressure. As he approached the jagged mountains of Jotunheim, the sky above mirrored the tension of the moment, heavy clouds gathering and swirling as if in anticipation. The wind carried distant roars, the echoes of the giant's presence, and Thor felt the familiar pulse of Mjölnir in his hand, a steady reassurance amidst the uncertainty. The first giant appeared as a shadow against the rugged peaks, its form immense and imposing. Thor raised Mjölnir slowly, sensing the energy coalescing within the hammer. When he struck the ground lightly, the earth trembled gently, sending a warning that this encounter was no ordinary test. The giant, surprised by the precision and calm of Thor's approach, paused momentarily, allowing the god to observe and assess. Unlike the trials in Asgard, this was not a controlled environment. Every movement had meaning, every choice carried consequence, and Thor understood that mastery of Mjölnir was only as effective as his judgment in applying it. Thor's strategy was deliberate. He moved with quiet confidence, each step measured, each swing of the hammer purposeful. When he struck, lightning erupted from Mjölnir in controlled arcs, illuminating the giant's form and reinforcing Thor's presence as both protector and challenger. The giant responded with its own force, its massive fist striking the earth, sending tremors through the rocks and valleys. Thor adjusted instinctively, allowing the hammer's magic and balance to guide his movements. The rhythm of battle became almost meditative, a dialogue between power and control, strength and wisdom. What made this confrontation particularly significant was Thor's understanding of responsibility. He could have unleashed Mjölnir with full force immediately, overwhelming the giant and ending the encounter quickly. Yet he chose restraint, testing the limits of both his skill and the hammer's capabilities while maintaining awareness of the surrounding environment. Rocks tumbled down cliffs, streams swirled from displaced earth, and the wind shifted unpredictably, but Thor remained composed, moving fluidly, attuned to the subtle cues of both the terrain and his opponent. Each strike, each deflection, was part of a larger pattern, a careful balance of offense and defense. Loki, observing from a distance, allowed a faint, quiet chuckle to escape, acknowledging Thor's deliberate control. Even the trickster, who often stirred mischief and challenge, recognized the importance of measured action in this moment. Thor's approach was not reckless bravado but the embodiment of the lessons he had learned in his training, that power alone is insufficient, and that true mastery arises from the union of strength, patience, and wisdom. Mjölnir responded flawlessly, its magic amplifying Thor's intent, returning to his hand with seamless precision, and providing a gentle, constant reassurance amidst the chaos of the battlefield. The battle progressed with subtle tension, each movement deliberate yet dynamic. Thor used Mjölnir not only to strike but to manipulate the elements around him. A swing could summon gusts of wind, a slight toss could send sparks dancing to distract the giant, and a controlled strike of lightning could illuminate hidden pathways. The giant, formidable as it was, could not anticipate every nuance of Thor's movements, nor the quiet mastery of the hammer's power. This interplay created a rhythm, a narrative of engagement that was both exciting and calming, as each action unfolded with purpose and intention rather than frantic haste. Throughout the encounter, Thor reflected on the nature of Mjölnir as more than a weapon. It was a tool of focus, an extension of his mind and spirit, a guide that emphasized responsibility as much as strength. Each swing, each precise strike, reinforced the connection between god and hammer, teaching Thor not only about the weapon's power but also about the role of courage, restraint, and judgment in maintaining harmony. Even in the midst of confrontation, there was an underlying calmness, a rhythm that allowed the chaos of battle to be both managed and appreciated. As the battle reached its crescendo, Thor executed a series of deliberate strikes, each enhanced by Mjölnir's magic, ultimately guiding the giant toward retreat without unnecessary harm. The encounter concluded not with destruction but with a quiet resolution, a testament to Thor's wisdom and measured control. The hammer, resting briefly in his hand, hummed softly with residual energy, a subtle acknowledgement of the god's skill and the harmony achieved between intent and execution. Thor, breathing steadily, observed the surrounding landscape, appreciating both the challenge faced and the calm mastery with which it had been met. This first battle solidified Thor's understanding of Mjolnir's role in his life and in the balance of the realms. The hammer was not only a weapon of formidable strength but a symbol of responsibility, courage, and measured action. Its magic and craftsmanship allowed Thor to act with precision, to navigate challenges thoughtfully, and to maintain the balance between power and restraint. In this way, the encounter with the giant became more than a simple fight. It was a lesson in wisdom, strategy, and the careful application of strength in service of protection. As Thor returned to Asgard, the evening sky bathed in warm, gentle light. He carried with him not only the experience of battle but the quiet understanding that mastery of Mjolnir was ongoing. Each encounter, each challenge, would reveal new aspects of the hammer's power and his own potential. And even as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the golden spires, Thor's connection with Mjolnir remained steady, a constant source of reassurance and purpose. The hammer had proven itself in the first test of true combat, and its legend, intertwined with the god who wielded it, continued to grow, slowly, deliberately, and profoundly, a story of strength, wisdom, and the calm assurance that comes from mastery. After the first battle, Thor began to understand more fully the depth of Mjolnir's power, not merely as a weapon of strength but as a tool of wisdom, protection, and balance. Each encounter with giants, each journey across the realms, revealed new facets of the hammer's magic and purpose. Thor's movements became increasingly deliberate, his awareness heightened, and the quiet rhythm of wielding Mjolnir became almost meditative. Every step, swing, and strike reinforced the intimate connection between god and weapon, a bond that extended beyond mere physical action to a deeper understanding of responsibility and restraint. In these quieter adventures, Thor explored the nuances of the hammer's abilities. Mjolnir could summon lightning with precision, not to destroy indiscriminately, but to illuminate, to signal, and to guide. Thor found that even a small spark could shift the course of an encounter, whether by startling a giant, revealing a hidden passage, or creating a protective barrier around those in need. Each use was a reminder that power is most meaningful when paired with intention, that even gods must act with discernment, and that the finest tools are those that reflect the mind and heart of their wielder. Thor's travels took him through varied landscapes, each presenting unique challenges. In dense forests, he tested Mjolnir's ability to clear obstacles with controlled force, ensuring the safety of both travelers and creatures alike. In icy mountains, he discovered the hammer's warmth-infused energy could melt barriers and create pathways across frozen terrain. Even in turbulent rivers, Thor learned that Mjolnir could manipulate currents gently, guiding the flow without causing unnecessary upheaval. Each situation, no matter how small or subtle, became an opportunity to deepen his understanding of the hammer's magic and his own role as a protector of balance across the realms. Loki, ever observant, remained a subtle presence in the background, introducing challenges that required thought and adaptability rather than raw power. Though mischievous by nature, the trickster's interventions often encouraged Thor to test the limits of Mjolnir creatively. In one instance, Loki arranged for Thor to encounter a group of giants whose paths were obscured by a dense mist. The challenge was not to strike immediately but to use the hammer's magic to sense the environment, to illuminate and reveal the unseen, and to navigate with calm deliberation. Thor's patience and precision turned the encounter into a quiet triumph, reinforcing the lesson that strength alone is never sufficient without awareness and control. During these adventures, Thor also reflected on the symbolic significance of Mjolnir. The hammer was more than a weapon, it was a representation of order, courage, and protection. It could bless homes, consecrate sacred spaces, and inspire confidence in those who witnessed its power. Each swing and each controlled display of energy carried a message, that responsibility accompanies strength, and that true protection is rooted in foresight, care, and intention. Even the giants, who observed the god's actions, recognized the hammer not merely as a tool of combat but as a symbol of measured authority and balance. Thor's encounters with the giants varied in intensity and outcome, yet each reinforced his growing mastery of Mjolnir. Some confrontations were brief, resolved with minimal force, while others required a series of carefully considered maneuvers. In every instance, the hammer responded flawlessly, its magic attuned to Thor's intent, returning to him effortlessly and amplifying his strength when needed. Through these experiences, Thor discovered that Mjolnir's true value was not in its ability to destroy, but in its capacity to guide, protect, and harmonize action with purpose. The calm and reflective nature of these adventures also allowed Thor to consider the lessons of restraint. He realized that Mjolnir, while immensely powerful, demanded respect, not only from those who faced it but from the one who wielded it. Each strike carried consequence, each use of power required discernment, and every decision shaped the balance of the realms in subtle ways. Thor's growing understanding of this principle strengthened his character, ensuring that he would wield Mjolnir not as a tool of chaos or domination, but as a force for stability and harmony. Through these continued journeys, the relationship between Thor and Mjolnir deepened further. The hammer became an extension of his mind and spirit, a guide in both conflict and contemplation. Each challenge, whether subtle or intense, revealed more about the intricate bond between intention, action, and consequence. Thor discovered that true mastery of the hammer was not defined by brute strength alone, but by the ability to act thoughtfully, creatively, and with purpose in every circumstance. By the time Thor returned to Asgard after these explorations, he carried not only the experience of physical encounters but a profound understanding of the hammer's role in shaping his identity as a protector. The golden halls welcomed him, and Mjolnir, resting comfortably in his hand, hummed softly with the energy of the adventures completed. Thor knew that countless challenges still awaited him, that giants, magic, and the delicate balance of the realms would always demand vigilance, but he also understood that with Mjolnir, patience, and wisdom, he could meet each trial calmly and effectively. In these quiet moments, as the sun set over Asgard and the gentle light of the evening bathed the golden spires, Thor reflected on the journey thus far. Mjolnir had proven itself a weapon of power, precision, and responsibility. It had become a companion, a guide, and a symbol of courage and protection. Each encounter, each adventure, reinforced the notion that true strength is measured not by the force one wields, but by the wisdom, patience, and intention with which it is applied. The legend of Mjolnir, woven through these journeys, continued to grow, a tale of calm, deliberate mastery, strength guided by wisdom, and the quiet, enduring power of a hammer forged in fire, magic, and purpose. As Thor continued to wield Mjolnir across the realms, word of his deeds began to spread quietly, almost like a gentle ripple across the vast oceans and forests of the Nine Worlds. Tales of his measured strength, his calm wisdom, and the magical hammer that accompanied him reached far beyond the walls of Asgard, whispered by travelers, carried by birds in the forests of Midgard, and murmured in the caves of Jotunheim. Even the giants, who once regarded him with suspicion and caution, began to tell stories of the god who moved with quiet deliberation, wielding a hammer that could command storms yet return to his hand with unerring precision. Thor's fame was not born of chaos or loud proclamations, but of the calm, confident manner in which he applied Mjolnir's power, always with purpose and awareness. The stories began simply, describing Thor's encounters with obstacles both great and small. In one tale, he had used Mjolnir to part a dense forest, creating a safe path for wandering travelers, ensuring that no harm would come to them. In another, he had guided a rushing river with subtle taps of the hammer, preventing floods and protecting the surrounding villages. And sometimes, the tales spoke of his confrontations with giants, of Mjolnir's arcs of lightning and the gentle hum of power as it returned to his hand, a demonstration not of reckless might but of control and focus. Each retelling emphasized the harmony between strength and wisdom, reminding listeners that the greatest power is wielded thoughtfully, with awareness of consequences. Even among the gods, Thor's reputation grew quietly but steadily. Odin, observing from his high seat in Asgard, noted the care with which Thor exercised Mjolnir's power. Unlike other gods who might be tempted to display force or demand respect, Thor acted with patience, precision, and insight. His calm approach inspired others, reinforcing the ideals of responsibility and measured action, and ensuring that the hammer's legacy would be one of protection rather than fear. Mjolnir was becoming more than a weapon. It was a symbol of divine authority tempered by wisdom, a reminder to all realms that true strength requires understanding as much as it does power. As the legend spread to Midgard, the people began to view Mjolnir not only as a tool of battle but as a blessing. Farmers spoke of Thor's hammer bringing rain to nourish crops, while travelers whispered of paths cleared through dangerous lands. Even children told stories of a hammer that could summon light and warmth, a comforting presence against the darkness of night. In these quiet ways, the myth of Mjölnir grew into a symbol of hope, protection, and reassurance, a constant reminder that, even in a world filled with uncertainty, careful strength guided by wisdom could maintain harmony. In Jotunheim, the giants observed the spreading tales with curiosity and, in some cases, respect. They understood that the hammer was formidable, but it was not the raw force that defined it. It was Thor's intention and discipline. Giants who once might have sought confrontation now considered negotiation, observation, and strategy, recognizing that the balance between strength and purpose mattered as much as physical power. The story of Mjölnir thus became a quiet influence, shaping behavior and reinforcing order, not through fear, but through the steady, deliberate reputation of the god who wielded it. Loki, as ever, found amusement and fascination in the spreading of these tales. The trickster had played his subtle part in setting challenges, orchestrating opportunities for Thor to demonstrate both skill and wisdom. Yet even Loki could not have predicted the depth of connection that Thor would form with Mjölnir, nor the calm authority that would radiate from the god's every action. The hammer was no longer merely a forged object, it was a companion, a teacher, and a symbol whose influence extended across realms, gently shaping the narratives of gods, giants, and mortals alike. With each retelling, Thor's adventures took on a reflective, almost poetic quality. Bards and storytellers, inspired by the calm rhythm of his journeys, spoke of the hammer's precise arcs of lightning, its perfect balance, and the quiet hum of energy that seemed to resonate with the very heartbeat of the cosmos. The myths emphasized the connection between Thor and Mjölnir, illustrating that the hammer's power was inseparable from the wisdom and responsibility of its wielder. Through these narratives, Mjölnir became a bridge between strength and guidance, action and reflection, protection and understanding. Even in moments of peace, Thor continued to explore the hammer's potential, seeking to deepen his understanding of its abilities and responsibilities. He meditated with Mjölnir, holding it against the sky as the winds whispered across the plains, feeling the flow of energy and the quiet pulse of the realms around him. He practiced subtle manipulations of weather, the flow of rivers, and the placement of stones across mountains, learning that even small actions, guided by intention and balance, could have profound effects. These exercises reinforced the quiet strength and mindfulness that had become central to Thor's identity as a protector and to Mjölnir's role as a symbol of calm authority. The spreading legend also brought reflection. Thor realized that Mjölnir was more than a tool for confrontation, it was a means of shaping behavior, influencing choices, and teaching lessons across the realms. Its power extended beyond the physical, touching hearts and minds, fostering respect for responsibility and wisdom. The hammer became a symbol of balance, a reminder that strength is most meaningful when tempered by care, and that the stories we leave behind can inspire courage, insight, and harmony in ways that mere might cannot achieve. By the time Thor returned to Asgard after his travels, the golden city shimmered in the gentle evening light, reflecting the quiet triumphs and lessons of the past weeks. Mjölnir rested comfortably in his hand, humming softly with the energy of countless experiences, its presence both reassuring and profound. Thor's understanding of the hammer had grown immeasurably. It was a weapon, yes, but also a guide, a symbol, and a source of inspiration across realms. The myths were spreading, the legends growing, and the calm, deliberate mastery of Thor and Mjölnir became a story that would echo for generations, a tale of power, wisdom, and the enduring balance between strength and responsibility. As Thor's journeys with Mjölnir continued, he began to encounter challenges that tested not only his strength but his wisdom, patience, and understanding of the hammer's magical limits. Each adventure offered subtle lessons, teaching him that the power of Mjölnir was greatest when used with intent, care, and a deep awareness of the consequences that rippled through the realms. The hammer, while forged with immense skill and enchanted with extraordinary magic, was not limitless. Thor soon realized that understanding its boundaries was as crucial as wielding its immense power, a lesson that required reflection and thoughtful experimentation. One day, as Thor traveled through a dense, mist-covered forest in Midgard, he sensed the presence of a creature that moved with cunning and stealth. Rather than rushing forward, Thor lifted Mjölnir and observed quietly, attuning himself to the flow of magic and energy around him. The hammer pulsed gently in his hand, responding to his intent, as though guiding him toward the subtle patterns hidden in the forest. Thor understood that this encounter was less about a display of force and more about precision and awareness. With calm deliberation, he used Mjölnir to create small flashes of light and controlled gusts of wind, illuminating the creature's path without harming it, gently guiding it away from the vulnerable travelers nearby. In this moment, Thor felt the deep wisdom embedded in the hammer. Its power was as much about protection and guidance as it was about striking down threats. Thor's next encounters were more formidable, presenting opportunities to test Mjölnir's limits in controlled yet high-stakes scenarios. In the mountains of Jotunheim, a group of giants had gathered, unaware of Thor's approach. Instead of striking immediately, Thor observed their movements, assessing the terrain, the weather, and the giants' intentions. Mjölnir hummed softly, a quiet affirmation of the connection between god and hammer. Thor realized that the hammer's magic allowed him not only to act with force but to anticipate and respond with strategic precision. Each swing, each controlled spark of lightning, was deliberate, minimizing unnecessary disruption while maximizing the effectiveness of his actions. Through these experiences, Thor learned that Mjölnir's enchantments were most powerful when aligned with his own focus. The runes inscribed upon its head were not merely decorative. They responded to Thor's intent, amplifying his understanding of both the immediate challenge and the wider consequences of his actions. This subtle, almost meditative quality of the hammer taught Thor patience. He understood that raw strength alone could not resolve every situation and that careful observation and thoughtful intervention often achieved more enduring results than a display of overwhelming force. Even in moments of apparent stillness, Thor discovered that Mjölnir's magic extended beyond combat. When he walked along rivers or across valleys, he could sense subtle shifts in the natural world, hints of imbalance that, if left unattended, could grow into significant challenges. The hammer allowed him to interact with the environment gently, moving obstacles, adjusting currents, and encouraging growth in plants and creatures alike. This quiet use of power, subtle and deliberate, reinforced the idea that Mjölnir was not only a weapon of war but a tool of stewardship and harmony, a reminder that strength is most meaningful when exercised thoughtfully. Loki, observing from a distance with his usual mixture of curiosity and amusement, noted Thor's growing mastery with both admiration and subtle envy. The trickster understood that Mjölnir's true potential lay not in raw destruction but in its partnership with Thor's mind and judgment. Loki's previous interventions, designed to challenge and provoke, now served to highlight Thor's ability to balance strength with responsibility, to act with both decisiveness and restraint. The quiet interplay of guidance, observation, and subtle challenge became part of the ongoing story of Mjölnir, deepening its significance as more than a weapon. It was a teacher, a symbol, and a reflection of Thor's own growth. Thor's adventures continued, each encounter reinforcing the delicate balance between power and control. He faced challenges from the elements, storms that could be guided rather than battled, floods that could be redirected, and fires that could be contained. Each situation required him to align his actions with the hammer's magic, to understand not only its abilities but its subtleties and limits. The rhythm of wielding Mjölnir became almost musical, a flow of intention, observation, and careful action that allowed Thor to navigate even the most complex scenarios with calm precision. Through these experiences, Thor's understanding of Mjölnir evolved from mere mastery of physical power to a profound comprehension of responsibility, patience, and wisdom. The hammer was not simply an extension of his strength, it was a guide, a reflection of his judgment, and a symbol of the balance that governed all realms. Its legend grew not only because of its raw might but because of the way it amplified Thor's ability to act with insight, measured response, and care. Each story, each quiet triumph, added to the ongoing myth, reinforcing the idea that the greatest power lies in thoughtful application rather than in unbridled force. By the end of these adventures, Thor returned to Asgard with a renewed sense of purpose and a deepened connection to Mjölnir. The hammer rested comfortably in his hand, pulsing softly with magical energy, a reminder of lessons learned and challenges overcome. Thor understood that Mjölnir's legacy would not be defined solely by its ability to strike, but by the wisdom, restraint, and deliberate intent with which it was wielded. Its story, intertwined with his own, continued to unfold, growing richer, more profound, and more enduring with each journey, each trial, and each quiet moment of reflection. As Thor's mastery of Mjölnir grew, so too did his journeys beyond the familiar borders of Asgard and Jotunheim. The hammer's magic guided him into realms both mysterious and enchanting, places where gods, mortals, and mystical beings intersected in ways that demanded not only strength but discernment, patience, and understanding. Each adventure was an exploration of balance, between power and restraint, action and observation, courage and wisdom. Thor began to realize that the true essence of Mjölnir was not only in battle but in navigating the subtle, interconnected rhythms of the cosmos. One of Thor's first ventures took him to Vanaheim, the realm of the Vani, known for their deep connection to nature, magic, and harmony. Here, the air itself seemed alive, vibrating with a gentle energy that responded to Mjölnir's presence. Thor walked carefully among forests that stretched endlessly, rivers that sparkled with sunlight, and meadows where flowers bloomed in patterns that mirrored the constellations above. Each step was measured, each movement deliberate, as he attuned himself to the quiet magic of the realm. Mjölnir pulsed softly in his hand, as if acknowledging the unique energy around them, ready to respond to Thor's intentions without disrupting the natural balance. The Vani observed Thor with interest, not with fear or hostility. They had heard tales of his hammer's power, yet they sensed the calm, purposeful approach with which he wielded it. Thor demonstrated his respect for their land by using Mjölnir sparingly, its energy guided gently to heal small disturbances, clear blocked streams, or lift fallen trees that hindered movement. Even in these subtle applications of power, the hammer's magic revealed its depth. It could reshape the environment without overwhelming it, harmonizing strength with intention. The Vani, in turn, shared knowledge of their magic, teaching Thor that true power often lies in understanding the connections between beings, nature, and the flow of energy throughout the realms. From Vanaheim, Thor traveled to Alfheim, the realm of the light elves, where luminescent forests and shimmering lakes created an atmosphere of ethereal calm. Here, Mjölnir's magic blended seamlessly with the gentle light of the elves, enhancing Thor's ability to perceive hidden paths, sense subtle shifts in the environment, and communicate through quiet gestures rather than words. Each interaction reinforced the idea that the hammer's power was not limited to striking or defending. It could also illuminate, reveal, and guide, helping Thor navigate challenges with precision and grace. The light elves, observing his respectful use of the hammer, came to regard him as a guardian figure, one whose strength was tempered by thoughtfulness and patience. Even in realms of peace and light, challenges arose. Thor encountered mischievous spirits, restless elementals, and ancient guardians who tested not his strength but his judgment. Mjölnir responded flawlessly, amplifying Thor's awareness and enabling him to act with subtlety rather than force. A careful strike here, a gentle pulse of energy there, and obstacles were resolved without conflict or harm. Each experience emphasized that true mastery of the hammer was not in overwhelming an opponent but in understanding the needs of the situation, responding with precision, and preserving harmony wherever possible. Loki, observing these adventures from the shadows, could not help but marvel at Thor's growth. The trickster, who had once orchestrated challenges to test the god's strength, now recognized that Mjölnir's true potential was inseparable from Thor's wisdom and restraint. The interplay of guidance, observation, and subtle mischief allowed Thor to refine his abilities, deepen his understanding of the hammer, and navigate the delicate balance between power and responsibility. Even Loki's presence, though sometimes disruptive, ultimately contributed to the evolving legend of Mjölnir as a symbol of careful mastery and enduring influence. Thor's journeys extended to realms of elemental challenge as well. In Muspelheim, the land of fire and volcanic fury, Mjölnir's controlled energy allowed him to temper raging flames, redirect molten rivers, and navigate treacherous terrain with calm precision. Each controlled act of power reinforced the lesson that Mjölnir was most effective when guided by foresight and deliberate action. Similarly, in Niflheim, the frozen realm of mist and shadow, the hammer's warmth-infused energy helped Thor traverse icy landscapes, maintain stability, and interact safely with the realm's mysterious inhabitants. In both extremes, fire and ice, Mjölnir proved its versatility, yet its true value remained in Thor's thoughtful application rather than mere destructive capability. Throughout these adventures, Thor reflected on the broader significance of Mjölnir. The hammer was more than a weapon of battle. It was a conduit for understanding, a symbol of responsibility, and a reminder that power must always be aligned with purpose. Each realm he visited, each challenge he faced, reinforced the principle that strength without awareness could lead to imbalance, while measured action guided by wisdom nurtured harmony. Mjolnir's legend continued to grow, not only because of its incredible might but because of the care, patience, and insight Thor brought to every interaction, battle, and act of guidance. By the time Thor returned to Asgard from these extensive journeys, the Golden Halls seemed to welcome him with quiet serenity. The hammer rested comfortably in his hand, humming softly with accumulated energy, its magic enriched by the diverse experiences across realms. Thor's understanding of Mjolnir had deepened profoundly. It was a weapon, yes, but also a guide, a symbol, and a companion whose power extended beyond combat to wisdom, protection, and subtle influence. Its story, intertwined with Thor's journeys, grew richer with every step, a narrative of calm mastery, enduring responsibility, and the quiet strength that defines true heroes in the myths of the realms. Even as Thor's reputation grew across the 9 realms, there were still challenges that tested the limits of both his strength and his wisdom. Among the most legendary of these was the cunning theft of Mjolnir, an event that would become a cornerstone of Norse myth. The story began quietly, almost imperceptibly, as Thor awoke one morning to find his mighty hammer missing from its usual resting place. The absence was immediately unsettling, not because the hammer itself was heavy or burdensome, but because it represented balance, protection, and the assurance of safety across realms. Thor felt a subtle disturbance ripple through the air, a quiet warning that forces beyond his immediate perception were at play. The thief, as Thor soon discovered, was none other than the trickster god Loki, whose curiosity and mischief were as legendary as Thor's hammer. Yet this act was more than mere pranking. It was a carefully orchestrated challenge, a test designed to push Thor's wisdom, patience, and ingenuity to their limits. Mjolnir had been hidden, guarded, and disguised, and Thor could not simply summon it with force or demand its return. He had to navigate a series of subtle clues, each requiring thought, observation, and a deep understanding of the realms and their inhabitants. Even in the face of such uncertainty, Thor remained calm, sensing that the hammer itself would guide him, revealing its presence at the right moments if he approached the challenge with care. Thor's first step was to seek counsel, traveling through Asgard to speak with the other gods. Odin, ever wise, reminded him that the true test of Mjolnir's loss was not merely to retrieve it, but to learn from the experience, to understand how balance and strength could be restored even when apparent control had been disrupted. Freyja offered insight into strategy and perception, emphasizing that subtlety and patience often achieved what direct force could not. Thor listened carefully, absorbing these lessons, and allowed the quiet hum of Mjolnir's magic, still faintly detectable even from afar, to guide his thoughts and decisions. The journey to recover the hammer took Thor into the realms beyond Asgard, including Jotunheim, where giants observed with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Loki's machinations had left traces, subtle hints embedded in natural formations, shadows, and whispered winds. Thor followed these signs patiently, using Mjolnir's lingering energy as a guide, sensing its pull and resonance even when it could not be seen. Each clue was a test of awareness, requiring him to balance action with observation, to interpret intention and pattern rather than respond impulsively. The quest became a meditation in motion, a journey that honed Thor's understanding of his own power, his judgment, and the connection between himself and his legendary hammer. As Thor progressed, he encountered obstacles designed to slow him and test his ingenuity. Rivers had shifted unnaturally, boulders blocked paths, and cunning illusions masked the simplest routes. Yet with each challenge, Mjolnir's magic responded subtly, providing guidance rather than force. A faint vibration here, a warm pulse there, directed Thor toward the correct path, reinforcing the lesson that true mastery is not always about immediate strength but about trust, perception, and thoughtful engagement. Even the harsh landscapes of Jotunheim, usually daunting, became navigable as Thor moved in harmony with the hammer's magic, each step deliberate, each decision measured. Finally, Thor arrived at the hidden location where Mjolnir was kept, a giant fortress of stone and shadow, concealed from ordinary sight. Loki, with his usual flair for mischief, had left riddles and traps, each requiring careful consideration and insight. Thor approached with calm resolve, studying the structure and the environment, understanding that brute force alone would not suffice. Mjölnir, sensing Thor's intent, pulsed gently, offering guidance and reassurance. With patient, deliberate action, Thor navigated the challenges, disarming traps with subtle movements, solving riddles by observing patterns in light and shadow, and maintaining focus even as the trickster's illusions threatened to distract him. When Thor finally held Mjölnir once again, the moment was profound, almost ceremonial. The hammer hummed softly in his grasp, a gentle affirmation of their enduring bond. Thor had been tested not only in strength but in patience, perception, and wisdom. The experience underscored a fundamental truth: the power of Mjölnir was inseparable from the careful judgment and awareness of the one who wielded it. Even in moments of loss or uncertainty, the hammer guided Thor, revealing the depth of their connection and the importance of thoughtful mastery over impulsive action. Thor returned to Asgard with Mjölnir safely in hand, the golden halls welcoming him with a quiet serenity. The tale of its temporary loss spread among gods and mortals alike, not as a story of failure, but as a lesson in resilience, patience, and the nuanced interplay between power and responsibility. Thor had learned that even the mightiest weapon is most effective when wielded with awareness, and that wisdom, observation, and careful action are as vital as strength in maintaining harmony across the realms. Through this experience, the legend of Mjölnir deepened. It was no longer just a symbol of physical might, lightning, or battle prowess. It had become a representation of insight, balance, and the enduring connection between intention and action. Thor's journey to reclaim it became a story not of conflict, but of measured determination, calm reflection, and the quiet, patient mastery that defines true heroes. The hammer, once again in Thor's hand, hummed softly with accumulated energy, a reminder of the lessons learned and the subtle magic that guided him across all realms. With Mjölnir safely back in his grasp, Thor felt a renewed sense of purpose. The hammer's gentle hum resonated through his arm, a quiet reminder of its power and the responsibility it carried. Though the challenge of its theft had tested his patience, perception, and wisdom, it had also reinforced an essential truth: Mjölnir's magic was intertwined with the intent, focus, and judgment of its wielder. Thor knew that the protection of the realms required not only strength but a calm, deliberate understanding of how and when to wield such formidable power. His first mission after reclaiming Mjölnir took him once again to Jotunheim, where the giants, though wary, had grown accustomed to the god's presence. This time, Thor approached with the lessons of his recent quest in mind, moving with quiet confidence and careful observation. The landscape stretched before him, jagged mountains dotted with forests and streams that shifted subtly with the wind. Each footstep was measured, each swing of the hammer calculated. Thor's objective was not simply to confront the giants, but to maintain balance, to ensure that potential conflicts were managed with precision, intention, and minimal disruption to the natural order. Thor's presence was immediately felt. A low rumble echoed through the mountains as he entered the territory, Mjölnir humming softly with energy, its magic sensing the giants' movements and intentions. Rather than launching an immediate attack, Thor observed. He noted the patterns in their movements, the rhythm of the wind and earth, and the subtle signals of their communication. By aligning his actions with these observations, Thor was able to anticipate challenges before they arose. The hammer, responding seamlessly to his intent, became an extension of his perception, allowing him to act with both strength and insight. The first encounter was with a group of giants who were unaware of Thor's approach. Rather than striking immediately, he allowed Mjölnir to project a controlled pulse of energy, a soft yet commanding signal that drew their attention without causing harm. The giants paused, their massive forms silhouetted against the jagged peaks, and Thor moved with quiet deliberation, assessing the environment and the potential outcomes of each action. In this way, the encounter became less a battle and more a carefully orchestrated demonstration of control, awareness, and measured force. As the day progressed, Thor encountered additional challenges. Some giants tested his patience, moving unpredictably or attempting to provoke him, while natural obstacles, falling rocks, shifting streams, sudden gusts of wind, demanded careful navigation. Mjölnir's magic responded to Thor's focus, amplifying his judgment and precision. With each swing, each controlled burst of lightning, Thor reinforced the lesson that the hammer's greatest strength lay not in raw destruction but in thoughtful, deliberate application. Every movement had meaning, every decision carried consequence, and Thor adapted with a calm, steady rhythm that reflected both his growing mastery and the quiet authority of the hammer. Loki, observing from a distance with his usual mixture of amusement and intrigue, noted Thor's evolving approach. Even the trickster recognized that the theft of Mjölnir had been a catalyst for growth, teaching Thor to trust not only the hammer's power but the subtle cues it provided. Loki's own challenges, whether through mischief, manipulation, or clever deception, highlighted the importance of perception, strategy, and patience in maintaining balance across the realms. Through these encounters, the bond between Thor and Mjölnir deepened, transforming the hammer into more than a weapon. It became a guide, a teacher, and a reflection of Thor's developing wisdom. The most significant test of this phase of Thor's journey came in the form of a giant who had grown particularly bold, attempting to challenge Thor directly. The confrontation was intense, yet Thor's calm mastery ensured that each movement was purposeful. Mjölnir hummed with restrained energy as Thor redirected the giant's force, using precise strikes and controlled arcs of lightning to disarm rather than destroy. The terrain itself became part of the strategy. Thor guided rolling boulders to block aggressive advances, summoned gusts to redirect momentum, and employed subtle manipulations of the environment to maintain advantage without unnecessary violence. By the time the encounter concluded, the giant had retreated, not defeated by brute force but guided away through the measured, deliberate use of power. This episode reinforced the core principle that Thor had been cultivating throughout his adventures, that strength alone is insufficient without wisdom and intentionality. Mjolnir's power was immense, but it was most effective when Thor's mind and judgment were in harmony with its magic. Even in moments of apparent conflict, the hammer encouraged patience, reflection, and strategic thinking, ensuring that Thor's actions preserved balance across the realms rather than simply asserting dominance. As the day came to a close and Thor returned to Asgard, the golden halls welcomed him with quiet serenity. Mjölnir rested comfortably in his hand, still pulsing with the subtle energy of the day's experiences. Thor reflected on the journey, not as a series of battles won or lost, but as a process of learning, growth, and deepening connection with his legendary hammer. Each encounter, each challenge, had reinforced the importance of measured action, thoughtful decision-making, and the understanding that true mastery of power lies in the balance between force and restraint. In these quiet moments, Thor felt a profound sense of calm. Mjölnir was not merely a weapon, it was a companion, a guide, and a symbol of responsibility and balance. The challenges he faced in Jotunheim and beyond had strengthened his resolve, sharpened his judgment, and deepened the legend of the hammer itself. Its story was no longer only one of power or battle prowess but of wisdom, patience, and the quiet authority that comes from understanding one's place in the cosmos. Thor's adventures with Mjölnir continued to grow into tales of calm mastery, enduring courage, and the subtle, measured application of extraordinary strength, creating a legacy that would resonate across realms for generations to come. After numerous journeys and encounters, Thor began to realize that Mjölnir's power was most effective not when wielded alone, but when combined with wisdom, counsel, and the guidance of allies. The protection of the realms, he understood, required cooperation as much as strength, and even a god could benefit from the perspectives and skills of others. With this in mind, Thor sought alliances with other gods, mystical beings, and wise entities across the 9 realms. These partnerships were not forged through force or intimidation, but through trust, respect, and the careful demonstration of his intentions. Mjölnir, as always, was a guide and companion, amplifying his resolve and ensuring that his influence was measured, deliberate, and balanced. One of Thor's first alliances was with Heimdall, the watchful guardian of the Bifrost, whose keen perception and knowledge of all realms complemented Thor's strength and Mjölnir's magical capabilities. Heimdall could sense disturbances before they became threats, detecting subtle imbalances in energy, motion, and intent. Thor relied on this insight to plan his movements strategically, allowing Mjölnir to act with precision and foresight rather than merely brute force. Together, the god and the guardian worked in harmony, demonstrating that even legendary power is most effective when guided by observation, patience, and mutual understanding. Freyja, the goddess of fertility, magic, and war, also became a valuable ally. Her deep understanding of mystical forces allowed Thor to explore the subtler applications of Mjolnir's magic. She taught him to manipulate elemental energies, harness ambient magic in forests and mountains, and even influence the growth and health of plants and animals. Thor learned that the hammer could channel these forces gently, reshaping environments without causing harm. In these moments, Mjolnir's legendary power was transformed into an instrument of harmony, reinforcing Thor's growing reputation as a protector not only of people but of the natural balance across the realms. Thor's alliances extended beyond Asgardian deities. He sought the council of giants who were wise and impartial, learning to discern between those driven by malice and those motivated by necessity or tradition. These interactions taught Thor that negotiation, understanding, and strategic empathy could be as powerful as the might of Mjolnir. By listening and observing, he could often prevent conflict before it arose, using the hammer subtly to reinforce guidance and safety rather than engage in direct combat. The hammer's magic seemed to respond to this intent, pulsing gently as if approving of Thor's careful, deliberate actions. Even Loki, despite his mischievous nature, became an occasional ally. While the trickster's methods were often unpredictable, they provided opportunities for Thor to test the adaptability of Mjolnir in unforeseen circumstances. Loki's interventions, riddles, illusions, and subtle manipulations forced Thor to rely on perception, strategy, and calm reflection. Each challenge strengthened the bond between god and hammer, deepening Thor's understanding that true mastery involves not only strength and skill but also patience, insight, and the ability to adapt to unexpected variables. Thor also forged alliances with mystical beings from realms rarely visited by gods. Elves, spirits, and guardians shared knowledge of secret pathways, hidden energy flows, and ancient sites where the hammer's magic resonated most strongly. Thor learned to combine his power with theirs, using Mjolnir to amplify and channel their energies in ways that enhanced protection, restored balance, and prevented potential disasters. These collaborative efforts emphasize that even the mightiest weapon is most effective when guided by cooperation, foresight, and the wisdom of multiple perspectives. Throughout these interactions, Thor reflected on the symbolic importance of Mjolnir in uniting the realms. The hammer, while formidable in combat, became a beacon of trust, collaboration, and careful judgment. Its legend grew not merely because of raw strength, but because of the way Thor wielded it responsibly, coordinating with allies, respecting the wisdom of others, and acting as a stabilizing force across worlds. In every negotiation, every collaborative effort, Mjolnir's energy reinforced Thor's intent, ensuring that his actions were precise, deliberate, and harmonized with the greater good. Some of Thor's most critical alliances were tested during coordinated efforts to prevent catastrophic events. In one instance, a surge of chaotic elemental energy threatened to destabilize parts of Midgard. Thor, Heimdall, and Freyja worked together, each contributing unique abilities while Mjolnir served as both amplifier and stabilizer. Thor directed lightning with meticulous control, guided by Heimdall's insight into energy flows and Freyja's magical adjustments. The result was a restoration of balance, achieved without unnecessary destruction, a testament to the power of collaboration and the subtle, multifaceted abilities of Mjolnir. These alliances also deepened Thor's understanding of leadership. He realized that strength alone cannot command respect or maintain peace. True leadership requires listening, adapting, and trusting others to contribute their skills and wisdom. Mjolnir became an extension of this philosophy, a tool that symbolized not only personal power but the responsibility to act thoughtfully, to guide rather than dominate, and to protect not only with might but with insight. Thor's calm, measured approach inspired confidence in his allies and respect in his adversaries, reinforcing the notion that the hammer's legend was as much about balance and wisdom as it was about battle prowess. By the time Thor returned to Asgard after these coordinated efforts, Mjolnir rested comfortably in his hand, humming softly with the accumulated energy of countless challenges, lessons, and victories achieved through collaboration. The hammer's story had evolved further, intertwining with the tales of gods, mystical beings, and guardians across the realms. It was no longer merely a weapon of destruction but a symbol of wisdom, responsibility, and the enduring power of deliberate, thoughtful action. Thor's mastery of Mjölnir, enhanced by his alliances, reflected a profound truth. True strength lies not only in the might one wields but in the ability to act with insight, patience, and harmony with the world around them. Following the lessons learned through alliances and collaboration, Thor found himself facing some of the most significant trials of his journey, challenges that tested not only his physical strength but his patience, judgment, and the deepening connection he shared with Mjölnir. These trials were not the chaotic battles of raw force that some might expect. Instead, they were subtle, intricate tests of wisdom and restraint, designed by fate, circumstance, and sometimes by the quiet mischief of Loki. Each trial served as a reminder that true protection required more than strength. It demanded mindfulness, discernment, and the ability to respond calmly to the unexpected. One such trial began in the high peaks of Jotunheim, where the landscape shifted unpredictably under the influence of ancient, hidden magic. Giants, both curious and cautious, had gathered near a network of towering cliffs and narrow passes, creating a scenario that required Thor to exercise careful planning rather than immediate action. With Mjölnir in hand, Thor observed the subtle signs of movement, the sway of trees, the patterns of wind across the cliffs, and the faint tremors in the ground that hinted at shifting boulders. Each observation informed his next step, and each swing of Mjölnir was executed with the precision of a measured, deliberate act rather than the impulse of brute force. This trial emphasized the quiet power of patience. Thor realized that by observing and waiting, he could anticipate the giant's movements, prevent accidents, and guide the natural flow of the environment in a way that minimized harm. Mjölnir, resonating softly with his focus, became a tool of guidance, amplifying his awareness and helping him act in harmony with the surrounding forces. Each gentle strike or controlled pulse of energy shifted obstacles subtly, revealing safe pathways for travelers and giants alike. It was a lesson in the understated strength of careful action and the profound influence of intention paired with power. Loki, ever present in his mischievous way, had subtly influenced parts of this trial, introducing illusions and minor disruptions meant to challenge Thor's focus. Shadows would twist unexpectedly, echoes of footsteps would mislead, and whispers of trickery floated through the mountain passes. Yet Thor, attuned to Mjolnir's subtle guidance and the rhythm of the realms around him, navigated these distractions calmly. The hammer's hum provided reassurance, a quiet affirmation that Thor's careful observation and measured responses were correct. Each obstacle overcame reinforced the idea that true mastery is not demonstrated through force alone, but through perception, patience, and the quiet application of wisdom. Another trial came in the form of elemental imbalance. In the forests of Midgard, rivers had swollen unexpectedly, winds whipped through treetops with unusual strength, and the earth itself seemed unsettled. Thor understood that these were not random occurrences but signs of underlying magical disturbances. With Mjölnir, he was able to stabilize the elements gently, redirecting currents, tempering winds, and calming tremors. Every action required careful calibration. Too little force would fail, too much could cause damage. Thor's ability to sense, respond, and harmonize with these forces illustrated the evolving nature of his mastery, highlighting that the hammer's true power lay as much in subtle influence as in dramatic displays of strength. The trials also extended to encounters with mystical beings, spirits of the forests, guardians of hidden valleys, and ancient watchers who tested Thor's judgment. These entities did not seek combat. Instead, they evaluated his wisdom, intent, and the way he wielded Mjolnir's magic. Thor learned to communicate through gesture, thought, and energy, using the hammer not as a weapon but as a medium of understanding. Mjolnir's magic responded, amplifying his presence and conveying his purpose clearly, allowing the Guardians to witness his respect for balance, order, and the sanctity of the realms. These encounters deepened the legend of the hammer as a symbol not only of protection but of insight, deliberate action, and ethical use of power. One of the most profound lessons of these trials was the understanding that leadership and protection are inseparable from responsibility. Thor realized that every swing, every controlled pulse of Mjölnir, carried consequences beyond the immediate moment. Even seemingly minor actions could affect the environment, the creatures within it, and the broader balance between realms. The trials reinforce the importance of acting with foresight, consideration, and integrity, ensuring that Mjolnir's power remained a force for harmony rather than chaos. Thor's growing awareness of this responsibility elevated his connection to the hammer, transforming it from a weapon of might into a guide and a symbol of measured authority. By the conclusion of these trials, Thor had not only reaffirmed his mastery of Mjolnir but had also strengthened the hammer's legend. The stories of his careful navigation through mountains, forests, and magical disturbances spread quietly among the realms, carried by travelers, observers, and the whispers of mystical beings. Mjolnir's reputation as a tool of protection, wisdom, and deliberate influence grew alongside Thor's own legend, illustrating that the greatest power is that which is applied thoughtfully, with calm, steady confidence and an understanding of its wider impact. Returning to Asgard, Thor reflected on the lessons learned. Mjolnir rested comfortably in his hand, humming with energy, a living testament to the journeys, trials, and wisdom accumulated across countless adventures. The hammer's story was now intertwined with Thor's understanding of patience, strategy, and responsibility, reinforcing that strength alone is insufficient to maintain balance. True mastery, he realized, comes from the quiet, deliberate application of power, a harmony between action and intent, and the trust that even the most formidable weapon must be guided by wisdom and reflection. In these quiet moments, as twilight bathed the golden spires of Asgard in soft light, Thor felt a deep sense of calm. Mjolnir was more than a hammer, it was a companion, a guide, and a symbol of enduring balance and careful mastery. The trials had tested him, shaped him, and enriched the hammer's legend, ensuring that the tale of Thor and Mjolnir would resonate across the realms for generations, a story of courage, patience, insight, and the subtle, quiet strength that defines a true protector of worlds. As Thor's adventures continued, his mastery of Mjolnir and his understanding of responsibility reached new heights. The hammer, which had once been primarily a symbol of physical strength, had become an extension of Thor's wisdom, judgment, and ability to protect the realms. This evolution was most evident during his later legendary exploits, where Thor faced challenges that tested not only his power but his patience, strategy, and sense of balance. Each encounter reinforced the idea that Mjolnir's true greatness was not measured by destruction alone, but by the deliberate, careful application of its magic to maintain harmony and justice across the 9 realms. One of the most notable of these exploits occurred in the icy reaches of Niflheim, where frost and mist had unsettled the natural order. Rivers froze unpredictably, winds shifted sharply, and even the shadows of the land seemed to twist unnaturally. Here, Thor's calm mastery of Mjolnir was essential. He moved with quiet precision, observing the rhythms of the frozen world and sensing disturbances that could have easily caused harm to both mortals and mystical beings. Each swing of Mjolnir, each controlled pulse of energy, was carefully directed to restore balance, thawing essential waterways, redirecting dangerous winds, and stabilizing the frozen terrain. The hammer's magic, responsive to Thor's focused intent, amplified these subtle interventions, allowing him to influence the environment without imposing overwhelming force. In Jotunheim, Thor faced another challenge that tested his ability to wield power with wisdom. A faction of giants, emboldened by past events, sought to assert dominance over a mountain pass that connected several realms. Thor could have responded with sheer force, striking swiftly and decisively, yet he chose a measured approach. Observing their movements and intentions, he used Mjolnir to create controlled displays of energy, lightning arcs that illuminated paths, gusts of wind that guided movement, and vibrations that communicated authority without unnecessary violence. The giants, sensing Thor's deliberate strategy and the careful use of the hammer's magic, eventually retreated with respect rather than fear. The encounter reinforced a lesson Thor had learned long ago, that true power lies in guidance, restraint, and strategic influence rather than simple conquest. Even the gods of Asgard watched with admiration as Thor's actions demonstrated a deepening understanding of leadership and responsibility. Odin, from his high seat, observed the subtle interplay between Thor and the realms, recognizing that the hammer had become a symbol not only of might but of measured judgment and the ability to inspire confidence in others. Freyja, too, noted the harmony in Thor's actions, the way Mjolnir allowed him to influence outcomes without unnecessary conflict, preserving the balance between divine intervention and natural order. These lessons extended beyond combat, shaping Thor into a protector whose strength was tempered by insight, empathy, and foresight. Loki, ever the trickster, remained a constant presence in Thor's story, introducing challenges and unexpected complications. Yet even Loki's mischief contributed to the evolution of Mjolnir's legacy. Through illusions, riddles, and subtle disruptions, Loki tested Thor's judgment, forcing him to rely not only on brute force but on observation, strategy, and calm reasoning. Each time Thor navigated these challenges successfully, the bond between god and hammer deepened, reinforcing the principle that mastery is achieved through patience, thoughtful action, and the alignment of power with wisdom. Thor's later exploits also extended to Midgard, where he interacted directly with humans and their environment. Villages threatened by natural disasters or hostile creatures were often aided by subtle applications of Mjolnir's magic. Lightning might be redirected to prevent forest fires, rivers gently guided to protect crops, or small tremors mitigated to safeguard settlements. These acts were never ostentatious. They were quiet, deliberate interventions that spoke to Thor's understanding that the greatest protection often goes unnoticed. Through these deeds, Mjolnir became a symbol of hope and reassurance, illustrating that true heroism combines strength with care and action with reflection. In each of these later adventures, Thor reflected on the deeper significance of Mjolnir. It was no longer simply a weapon or a tool of combat. It was a teacher, a guide, and a representation of balance across realms. Its magic responded not only to his strength but to his intent, amplifying careful judgment and thoughtful decision-making. Thor understood that the hammer's legacy would endure not just because of its formidable power, but because of the wisdom and responsibility with which it was wielded. Every strike, every subtle manipulation of energy, reinforced the idea that strength without understanding is incomplete, and that the greatest heroes are those who act with foresight, compassion, and harmony. By the time Thor returned to Asgard after these exploits, the golden halls seemed to shimmer with the quiet reflection of his accomplishments. Mjolnir rested comfortably in his hand, pulsing softly with the energy of countless trials, victories, and lessons learned. The hammer's story had grown richer, intertwined with the narratives of gods, giants, mystical beings, and humans alike. Its legend had transformed into something far greater than mere might. It had become a symbol of wisdom, patience, and the enduring impact of thoughtful action. In the soft glow of Asgard's twilight, Thor felt the profound serenity of a god who had learned to balance immense power with careful judgment. Mjolnir, resting in his hand, seemed to hum in quiet agreement, a testament to their shared journey, the trials overcome, and the enduring legacy they were shaping together. Across the realms, whispers of these adventures spread like gentle ripples, stories of calm mastery, responsible strength, and the subtle, quiet heroism that defines true protectors. Thor and Mjolnir, inseparable in purpose and action, had become a living legend, one that would endure in myth, memory, and the hearts of those who sought reassurance in the knowledge that even the greatest power can be wielded with wisdom, care, and calm resolve. As Thor's adventures across the 9 realms drew toward later chapters, a sense of quiet reflection settled upon him. The hammer, Mjolnir, had accompanied him through countless trials, teaching lessons of patience, wisdom, and measured strength. Thor understood now that the greatest challenges were not only the ones that tested his muscles or bravery, but those that demanded thoughtfulness, foresight, and balance. Mjolnir's legend had evolved alongside him, from a weapon of raw power to a guide, a teacher, and a symbol of responsibility and harmony that resonated through all realms. One of Thor's final legendary deeds took him to the storm-laden coasts of Midgard, where violent tempests threatened villages and travelers. These storms were no ordinary weather. They carried traces of chaotic magic, remnants of past conflicts between realms. Thor approached not with fear or aggression, but with calm observation. He lifted Mjolnir, feeling the subtle vibrations of energy in the air, and allowed the hammer's magic to attune to the rhythm of the storm. Gentle pulses of lightning were directed to disperse the harshest clouds, while controlled winds steered waves safely away from the shores. The storm's fury diminished under Thor's measured guidance, illustrating once again that Mjolnir's greatest power lay not in destruction, but in thoughtful application and the preservation of life. Throughout this period, Thor also visited ancient sacred sites across the realms, shrines, groves, and mountains imbued with deep, quiet magic. These places reminded him that the protection of the realms was not solely about action, but about maintaining balance, respect, and reverence for the forces that governed existence. Mjölnir resonated strongly in these sacred spaces, amplifying Thor's connection to the subtle energies of the cosmos. He discovered that even small gestures, redirecting a stream to nourish a grove, stabilizing a shifting rock formation, or calming restless spirits, could have profound, lasting effects. Each act reinforced the understanding that real strength combines physical might with insight, care, and a mindful awareness of consequences. Loki, though still mischievous, played a quieter role during these later adventures. The trickster's interventions, subtle and often hidden, continued to remind Thor that even the most familiar challenges could be unpredictable. Each unexpected twist required patience, observation, and calm reflection. Thor found that by maintaining focus and trust in Mjolnir's guidance, he could navigate these situations with grace. The hammer responded to his intentions, amplifying not only power but judgment, allowing Thor to act decisively yet responsibly. These experiences deepened the bond between god and hammer, transforming their relationship into one of mutual respect and understanding. Thor's final trials also emphasized the importance of mentorship and leadership. As he moved through the realms, he encountered younger gods, warriors, and mortals seeking guidance. Thor realized that his role was not merely to intervene, but to teach, demonstrating through example how strength could be balanced with wisdom, patience, and careful judgment. Mjölnir became a teaching tool, illustrating principles of control, responsibility, and harmony. Thor would show how a precise strike, a gentle pulse of energy, or a careful observation could achieve what brute force alone could not. Through these lessons, the hammer's influence extended beyond immediate action, shaping future generations and the broader legacy of the gods. In these later exploits, Thor also reflected on the symbolic power of Mjölnir. It was no longer only a weapon or a tool of battle, it had become a manifestation of the principles he had embraced: responsibility, discernment, harmony, and the deliberate, thoughtful application of power. Its stories, of theft, of trials, of alliances, and of subtle interventions, were no longer merely tales of combat, but lessons in balance, foresight, and quiet heroism. Thor understood that the hammer's true strength was inseparable from his own growth as a protector, a leader, and a god attuned to the needs of the realms. As twilight fell upon Asgard, Thor often paused to reflect. The golden halls shimmered in soft light, a mirror of the harmony he had strived to maintain across realms. Mjölnir rested comfortably in his hand, humming with the accumulated energy of countless adventures, lessons learned, and challenges overcome. Thor recognized that the hammer's legend was now inseparable from his own. It was a story of courage tempered by wisdom, strength guided by care, and power balanced with responsibility. Across realms, beings whispered tales of Thor and Mjölnir, not just as a god and a weapon, but as a partnership that embodied the quiet, enduring principles of protection, insight, and deliberate mastery. In these moments of reflection, Thor's heart was filled with calm satisfaction. He had faced storms, giants, mystical trials, and the challenges of leadership, each adventure enriching his bond with Mjölnir and deepening his understanding of his role in the cosmos. The hammer, pulsing softly, reminded him that its magic was not only in striking or defending, but in guiding, protecting, and maintaining balance. It had become a symbol of measured authority, wisdom, and the quiet strength that preserves harmony across realms. As night fell and the stars of the 9 realms shimmered in the sky, Thor rested, Mjölnir by his side. The hammer's soft hum echoed the rhythm of the universe, a gentle reminder that even the most powerful force can be wielded with care, thoughtfulness, and respect. Thor's story, intertwined with Mjölnir, had become a legend not of mere battles won or enemies vanquished, but of calm mastery, deliberate action, and enduring protection. Across the realms, this legacy would continue to inspire awe, respect, and reassurance, a timeless reminder that true power is defined not by force alone, but by wisdom, patience, and the quiet courage to act with purpose. With that, the tale of Thor and Mjölnir reached its serene culmination. The hammer, resting in the hands of its master, pulsed gently, a living testament to the journeys, trials, and lessons that had shaped them both. And as the night deepened across the 9 realms, the legend of Thor and Mjölnir settled into the hearts of all who would listen, a story of strength guided by wisdom, courage tempered by patience, and the enduring magic of careful, thoughtful heroism. As Thor's adventures drew to a natural close, he found himself reflecting upon the many journeys, trials, and lessons that had shaped both him and Mjölnir. The hammer, once seen primarily as a weapon of immense power, had become so much more than that. Through every challenge, encounter, and subtle intervention, it had proven itself as a guide, a companion, and a symbol of responsibility and harmony. Thor realized that the true magic of Mjölnir lay not in its ability to strike with lightning or crush the strongest of foes, but in the way it amplified the wisdom, patience, and deliberate intent of its wielder. It was a gentle reminder that power is most effective when tempered by understanding and care. In the golden halls of Asgard, Thor often stood quietly, gazing at the horizon where the realms met the sky. Each shimmering realm beyond held the echoes of his adventures, the winds of Jotunheim, the forests of Midgard, the frozen mists of Niflheim, and the luminescent groves of Alfheim. These lands were not just backdrops for his legendary deeds, they were living, breathing spaces that had shaped him and been shaped in turn by the measured application of Mjölnir's magic. Thor's reflection deepened as he recognized that his role was not to dominate or control, but to observe, guide, and preserve the balance that allowed all realms to coexist in harmony. Thor's thoughts often wandered to the allies and beings he had met along the way. Heimdall, with his ever-watchful gaze, had taught him the value of perception and foresight. Freyja had revealed the subtle power of magic, patience, and cooperation. Even Loki, with his endless mischief, had forced Thor to hone his adaptability, judgment, and calm reasoning. Every interaction, every challenge, had been a layer in the tapestry of wisdom that Thor now carried alongside Mjölnir. The hammer was more than a tool, it was a reflection of the lessons learned, a living testament to the enduring principles of responsibility, discernment, and harmony. As Thor walked through Asgard's quiet halls, Mjölnir at his side, he often paused to consider the deeper meaning of heroism. It was not simply about feats of strength or victories over enemies. True heroism, he realized, was about acting with care, thinking ahead, and recognizing the consequences of one's actions. Every strike of the hammer, every subtle adjustment to the flow of energy across the realms, had been an exercise in thoughtful influence. The greatest stories of Thor and Mjölnir, he understood, were those that illustrated patience, insight, and the quiet courage to act wisely rather than impulsively. In his reflective moments, Thor also thought about the inhabitants of the realms he had helped protect. The people of Midgard, the mystical beings of Alfheim and Vanaheim, the giants of Jotunheim, all had been part of the intricate balance that defined the 9 worlds. Thor's role had been to preserve that balance, to guide without overwhelming, and to wield Mjölnir in a way that enhanced life rather than simply asserting dominance. Even when the hammer's power was immense, its purpose was clear: to support, protect, and harmonize. This understanding became the foundation of his calm confidence, the quiet strength that defined the latter part of his legendary journey. Thor also reflected on the subtle lessons of loss and reclamation. The day Mjölnir was stolen had been a turning point, a reminder that even the most powerful tools could be misdirected or removed, and that true strength lay not in possession alone but in the understanding, patience, and discernment necessary to reclaim and wield it responsibly. The hammer's temporary absence had strengthened Thor's awareness, teaching him to act deliberately, think strategically, and trust in both his own judgment and the subtle guidance of the hammer itself. These lessons, quietly absorbed over time, became the essence of his enduring wisdom. As twilight settled over Asgard, Thor would often look toward the stars, contemplating the endless sky and the interconnectedness of all realms. He understood that the story of Thor and Mjölnir was part of a larger cosmic narrative, a tale of responsibility, guidance, and measured influence that would continue long after individual deeds were forgotten. The hammer's gentle hum in his hand seemed to echo the rhythm of the universe, a soft, reassuring reminder that even immense power could be wielded with care and purpose. In these quiet, contemplative moments, Thor's heart was filled with serenity. The hammer rested comfortably at his side, pulsing with the quiet energy of countless journeys, battles, lessons, and triumphs. Mjölnir had grown from a simple weapon into a living symbol of wisdom, patience, and deliberate action. Its story, intertwined with Thor's own, was a narrative of courage tempered by reflection, strength balanced by responsibility, and the enduring impact of thoughtful heroism. As night fell over Asgard, the golden halls bathed in soft moonlight, Thor finally allowed himself to rest. Mjölnir lay beside him, humming gently, a testament to the adventures completed, the lessons learned, and the legacy built. Across the 9 realms, whispers of the god and his hammer traveled quietly, stories of calm mastery, deliberate guidance, and the enduring power of wisdom paired with strength. These tales would resonate in hearts and minds for generations, a gentle reminder that the greatest power is that which is exercised thoughtfully, responsibly, and with care. And so, as the stars twinkled softly above the 9 realms, the tale of Thor and Mjölnir settled into its serene, timeless rhythm. The hammer, resting in the hands of its master, had become more than a weapon. It was a guide, a symbol, and a companion. The story concluded not with chaos or conflict, but with calm reflection, a deep sense of balance, and the quiet assurance that strength guided by wisdom endures. It was a story for the ages, a legend of courage, insight, and gentle mastery, perfect to settle into memory like a peaceful dream as the 9 realms rested under the watchful care of Thor and the enduring magic of Mjölnir.